Seth is one of my dear friends. He's a good guy. He went to med school with my sister.
Call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to the March 8th, 2022 Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. If you're here to speak during the public hearing portion of an agenda item, please wait until I recognize you and have opened the public hearing. Once the public hearing has been opened, one person at a time may come forward to speak at the podium. Please speak clearly into the microphone and begin by giving your name and address. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak for or against the item they're there to speak about. And please address your questions or comments to the commission only. We'll now proceed to call the meeting to order. The time is 6:10. Commissioner Rhodey, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation?
Stacey, please.
Sorry, invocation first.
Invocation first.
Sorry, I apologize.
Tricked everybody. We turned towards the flag.
We can stand. We can sit to
Chris, we can still stand.
You can still stand.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
like.
we'll stand.
Okay.
We'll just stand.
God, please guide us and protect the refugees of Ukraine in this time of conflict. Let us not ignore this with indifference, but rather pray for peace for these unfortunate people in another war. As written by Eli Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor, the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it is indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it is indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it is indifference. I know because I survived a World War II bombing raid and was a refugee from the Russian advance. So please don't be indifferent. We ask you this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Please face the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we've got an agenda before us. I think the agenda has been distributed amongst the audience. I'll ask the commission, does anybody have any change or staff to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Nicole, would you call the roll, please?
Oh. Yes, so sorry. Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner, excuse me, Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oshabine.
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
and Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes. Okay. The minutes of the previous meeting from February 8th have been submitted and have been reviewed. Does anybody have any corrections or any additions to the minutes from last month? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved for approval.
Second.
Second.
All right, Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oshabine.
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey.
Yes.
And Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes. Okay, we'll move into our section for old business. Ms. Voren, I believe you have a topic that's been before us several times, and we're happy to have it back again.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am very happy to present the rezoning at the corner of South Roan and University Parkway from R1 to PB Planned Business and R4, and not a deferral this month. So to kind of bring you guys back, because this was last heard at the September Planning Commission in 2021, this was the concept plan that you guys saw, and this was the rezoning request for this sliver of the site. And the reason why we had issues at this planning commission was because of the form of egress and ingress and issues with some site distance. The new request that is in front of you guys tonight is the same one in the sense that they are still asking to expand this planned business, and they are now asking to rezone this property right here to R4. Now, R4 is what matches the surrounding East Highland neighborhood, so this would actually be matching the surrounding zoning. And again, another reminder from the previous history, the lot is currently split zoned. So as you see, this whole thing is currently one parcel, and it's R1 up here, and then it's PB down here. Now, there is a subsequent subdivision that is going to be in process to align with the proposed zoning, so it will not be split zone forever, assuming the subdivision goes through. The subdivision lines will match the proposed zoning lines. And here I have the new concept plan. Now, the biggest thing that I want to draw you guys' attention to is the new forms of egress and ingress. So if we look down here where that original driveway was proposed, you still have this right in and right out. But now you have this new all access point that is at the top of the hill, so it has the sight distance. Now, in order to accommodate this driveway on the residential piece of property, that's why they're asking for the R4 rezoning, because realistically, having this commercial entrance on an R1 piece of property just isn't going to work. And so the new proposal involves 6 townhomes on this piece right here, and these townhomes would face on East Highland, but they would access from South Roan. And again, here are some photos of the property. There were 2 neighborhood meetings held. The first one was on September 9th at 6 p.m., and there were concerns over egress and ingress, which obviously got addressed at the Planning Commission when we brought those concerns to light. And then now there was still concerns over the potential egress and ingress, and there was one person who was in attendance. Staff does recommend approval, and the following policies support that. I will leave you guys with a vicinity map, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Questions for staff? Okay. I'll open the floor for public comment. If you have a comment, please come forward, state your name and address. Ben, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Ben Berry with Berry Engineers, 63 Broad Street, Cleveland, Tennessee. Should have a new category, old or really old business. And I apologize for the delay, and really thank you for your patience and staff's patience on this. So at their last meeting, I'll be quick since I know you have a big agenda. Our last meeting, there was support from the board on the proposal that we had, but it required some variances from TDOT. City manager worked with us. We wrote a good letter to TDOT petitioning for them to change their access control fencing. After 2 or 3 months of deliberation, it went all the way to Nashville. It came back with a no. So we went back to the landowner. We went back to the tenant on the deal and really kind of tried to see if there was support for any other alternate plan. Went back to the city. So the plan that we have here, we've gotten support from both the technical staff at the city, gotten support from TDOT, and gotten support from the seller and the tenant. So we have herding cats a little bit, but we have all of the cats herded, we think, with support around this plan. And that puts the main access point at the top of the hill and provides good sight distance for really all 3 properties that would be developed as a result of this. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Questions for Ben? Who conceived the final design? Was this your construction, your idea?
So the access points was, yes, it was us with presenting the plan to the city and also to TDOT.
That was a pretty creative plan.
Yeah, and then we also worked with the city on the remaining piece, the residential piece, and that was actually a suggestion by city staff as to how to access the remaining residential piece that was at the corner, which I thought was a great idea, to have rear access on what could be residential. We won't be developing that, but that could be sold to somebody else. And it was a good access plan for that remaining residential piece as well, is what I thought, so. Group effort.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you, Ben. Is anyone else here to speak to this question? For or against? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment. Any discussion amongst the commission?
No, I think we've seen this enough, and I think the improvements that they've made is going to be fine. so.
Yeah.
It is a very creative solution to the problems we identified.
That was tough, yeah.
I'll move for approval of the request.
Any other discussion? We have a motion for approval of the, I guess it's the rezoning.
Zoning.
I second that motion.
Okay. No further discussion? Nicole, please call the roll.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oceanbine.
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Ms. Hodge, I believe we're revisiting a topic from Embreville Road.
Yes, we are. So this has not been before you since November. And they have made some changes to their plan, and their request is smaller than originally had been thought, which was something that came out of that November meeting. So they have put into our portal system, which is City View, a final plat, which has been approved, selling this lot to the adjoining owner, which was part of some of the steps that needed to occur in order to bring this forward. So all that we are looking at for a potential rezoning is a 0.84 acre site that is being requested to go from R2 to R2C, and both of these are low density residential districts. Just kind of want to give an overview of what, a little quick, very quick, of how this plan has iterated through a year. This actually started with staff about a year ago, where originally they thought that they might put multifamily here, and they met with the neighbors, and the neighbors did not think that that was consistent with what is surrounding them. And so Mr. Begley went back, he withdrew the request, and that's where you saw the larger with the 5 lots and this 1 lot in the back. That came in October, where there was a neighborhood meeting. The neighborhood liked the idea that it was single family, but still had a lot of questions about compatibility with lot size, renting versus homeownership, how many bedrooms, different kind of market forces there. And then, like I said, they have sorted this out a little bit into the 2 lots, which they needed to do. And then with this, I'm going to go through that there are 4 single-family lots. The average lot size is around 9,600 square feet. It is a little bit bigger than what you would have for the R2C. However, why they would like the R2C is that their lot widths, it's a hard word to say, are less than what they need for the R2B. So at R2B, you need 75 feet of lot frontage, and they're proposing 64. So that's one of the reasons that some of these flexibilities in the R2s with the A's, B's, and C's give you some options there. But the front and side setbacks are the same. The rear setback would be a little smaller. This is just as we've discussed before, this area has been called to be residential, not necessarily specifying the types of residential, but residential is consistent. These are some pictures from Embreville Road of what the existing house looks like and back of that lot. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know that there is public here to speak. At least there's public here to listen.
Questions for staff?
Whitney, can you go over you said something about the 5,200 square feet. Is that for the 2C? I mean, the RC?
So their average lot size is around 95 square hundred feet.
Okay.
The minimum is 6,000.
Gotcha. Okay. I looked at that wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
And just so you know, the Planning Commission did ask for another neighborhood meeting. One was held on January 5th. It was very productive with conversations between the developer and the residents that were there. Staff recommends approval, and the bridge plan policy of kind of providing for infill development would support that.
Any other questions for staff? I'll open the public floor for comment. Is anyone here to speak for the question? Come forward, please, to the microphone and speak your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Theodore Sims, 2206 Windale. I'm actually opposing.
Okay.
So you said anyone speaking for, so just wanted to clarify.
Okay, go ahead. I didn't see anybody step up for the
Okay.
floor.
In the meeting in January, a number of questions were brought up, none of which were able to be answered at the time. Primarily in the meeting rules, so to speak, it says there needs to be a benefit to the neighborhood. And we have never been given any sort of a benefit to the neighborhood as far as what this is going to do. Lot number 5, the last time anyone was speaking about it, it hadn't been sold, so that was up in the air, and there was a possibility that that could be redeveloped and property further down as well. The size of the lots lends themselves to houses which are going to be smaller, which are going to be rental properties. There are rental properties within the immediate neighborhood. I don't have an issue with them. I do have an issue with the size of the houses that are going to be there, and it lends itself more toward rental properties, people who aren't going to take an interest in the neighborhood and in the community. My name's Theodore Sims. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
Commissioners.
Hey, good
I'm
evening.
Susan Kellogg. I'm at 2218 North Greenwood Drive, and I'm here to oppose the rezoning from a 2R to a 2RC. And the reason I oppose this is I'm thankful that Mr. Begley has come down from 11 units to where we are today, but having it rezoned I don't think is necessary. I think we can keep it as a 2R, and still, Mr. Begley, the builder, could profit from that. I know the city could profit from that. And as Mr. Sims just said, we're wanting to know how the community, the neighborhood, will benefit from that. And he mentioned an article that is in the Planning Commission's policies that state that the builder should give some type of a proposal on the benefit to the community for this rezone. I'm particularly concerned because in this area here, and Whitney, I don't know if, and I'm sorry to ask Whitney a question, I know you, but we don't know, Mr. Wilson bought that lot number 5, correct?
Correct.
So that has gone through, but we don't know what it was rezoned to.
It's not been rezoned.
So it's still a 2.
It still stays R2, and so if it were to develop, something like, it would have to come before the planning commission as well.
Okay, but my concern is with that large lot, and I am right on the other side, so my home is here, Mr. Wilson's home is here, he owns this, and then he purchased that lot number 5 from Mr. Begley. I'm concerned with the domino effect that might happen with a rezone like that. Once it's rezoned to a R2C, could easily, this whole lot, which is right beside my property, take that one little step and rezone that, or even go further and have a rezone to an R3 in the future, which means there could be, because of the size of that land, quite a few properties placed on there, either small homes or apartment complexes. So my opposition really falls in that area and the location of my home. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Kellogg. Anyone else to speak to the question? I'll close the floor for public comment. All right, conversation amongst the commission. Any other questions for staff?
Whitney, is there any set plan for the remainder of that property currently right now?
The one that was sold to Mr. Wilson? No, and there doesn't need to be. From
Yeah.
what we understand, he just wants to use it.
Okay.
So for this, it
Yeah, he's not mentioned anything. Okay.
As it exists, it's, the remainder of the property is still R2. What, it would have to come back before us, obviously, for a site plan, but remind me of what are the options for higher density or multifamily, I guess, in R2? Is there?
there is not.
There's not-
It is
there's
only
not.
single family for
That's what I
that.
thought, okay.
And so now that this is, because, okay, I'm going to go back to something to kind of explain to explain some things that might be a little easier. Okay, so this lot, when they combined it, because when you broke off this part, it had no access, so it had to be combined
Right.
in order to use this as access.
Correct, yeah.
So if you wanted to further divide it, there has to be at least, like, into two lots, has to be at least 50 feet of frontage.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to develop it for, let's say, under R2C, you'd have to put in some type of road, which would mean that it comes back to the planning commission. Anything that has more than two lots comes back to the planning commission. If it got rezoned, it goes through the process that Mr. Begley, or if it's being asked to be rezoned, it would go back through the process that Mr. Begley is asking for. If it is under R2, it would be a preliminary plat situation.
What is how much road frontage is? I can't see that.
I can't see it either.
You can't see it either. It looks like about 50 feet, but I'm,
It says 50.
okay.
One day I will look at it.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
I would move for approval of the request. In my opinion, I think this is a developer who's worked with the neighborhood. I think a single-family development of this property is in keeping with the existing development around it. And so I would move for approval of the rezoning request.
I'll second that motion.
All right, conversation about the motion. Anybody have a question about the motion or understand the motion? Motion is to approve the rezoning. All right, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oshenbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
and Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you very much. Mr. Ryder, I believe you have our first item under new business.
Not used to being first.
Good evening, Chairman Dagenhart, Commissioners. This is a preliminary plat for the division of the GRTS partners of the GP property. That's located right across the street over here on East Market Street, and it in the vicinity of the intersection with South Broadway Street. Here's a look at the preliminary plat. This plat's pretty straightforward. It's a 16-lot subdivision for future single-family development, a total of 2.7 acres. You can see on the plat, maybe you can see it better here, these are shared driveways, so that minimizes the amount of curb cuts that they have to make. Instead, it helps out with the site distance, helps out with reducing the ingress and egress points on East Market Street. I'll go back. 8 driveway cuts, zoned R4, which is what the adjoining neighborhood, which we'll see in another slide, it shares the same zoning, so very compatible with the development that's already there. You can see that's there's setbacks and minimum lot size. City water and sewer is available, no road dedications, no variance requests. And just for reference here, this is roughly the area on East Market Street where the plat is. And you can see it's close to Broadway down here. And it's a pretty straightforward plat. We're recommending approval of this preliminary plat.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder.
Yes, sir.
Question for staff?
This is preliminary, right?
Yes, ma'am. Preliminary because there will be some some sewer construction. Otherwise, we probably would have been able to bring it to final plat, but since there's sewer construction, which we will review in the construction plan phase, it will come back to you as a final plat.
Any other questions for staff? I'll open the floor for public comment. Is anyone here to speak in favor or against this proposal? Seeing no one stepping forward, I'm going to close the floor for public comment. Any discussion amongst the commission?
Chairman, I move for a motion to approve the GRTS Partners GP property preliminary plot.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Any discussion about the motion? Any clarification? Nicole, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oshenbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ryder, I think you have the next item.
Yes, sir, another preliminary plat out on Indian Ridge. I'm going to skip forward here just a second, just so you remember. This is the property that you all considered the plan of services and the zoning assignment. The annexation was approved, this area here in red, this was approved by the city commission back on January the 6th of this year. So that's the area that that's the area that we're talking about. That may help a little bit in just placing this before we go on to the plat. It's a 122 lot subdivision for future single-family development, 40.02 acres. Already mentioned the annexation date. The zoning assignment, this was not a rezoning, it was a zoning assignment that came with the annexation of R2C. I think you all are quite familiar with the lot sizes after Whitney's presentation. There are 7 street dedications, roads A through G. When we get to final plat, those roads will have names. They have 3 temporary turnarounds, all with control strips, and a control strip over here. The reason there's no turnaround here, the subregs require to have a temporary turnaround if you believe. We anticipate there may be future connection, possibly, in the adjoining property. How likely or unlikely that is, I'm not sure, but that's why these are to be temporary turnarounds with 5-foot control strips on the plat. This one does not have a temporary turnaround, and the reason for that is a temporary turnaround is required by the subregs if the lots are too deep at the end of a stub, and you can see that this is not too deep. So that's perfectly acceptable there. So 7 street dedications with the temporary turnarounds for possible future road extension. And the other thing that I'm just touch on briefly here is there will be some road dedication associated with this plat. This dedication line is not final. That's fine. We'll hammer that out when we get it towards final plat. The reason being is that the city of Johnson City is going to realign Indian Ridge Road, and they're going to straighten this. And I think you remember, and we have a map later on, I believe, I remember to include it. I think you all are familiar with this with this almost 90-degree turn here. So the city of Johnson City is going to put in a roundabout. This location may be tweaked a little bit after the preliminary plat approval as we get into the construction plan phase. The realignment, the exact amount of the dedication will be hammered out during the construction plan phase, but just be advised that there is a plan to put in a roundabout and realign this road, straighten it to help facilitate traffic in this neighborhood, this future neighborhood. The 7 street dedications, they are all built to the local street cross-section of the subdivision regulations. That's here on the left. You can see here on the right that they have on the grass verge, that's 5.5, just so to explain these black boxes here, it's 5.5 to 7.5 feet. That's up to the developer, and they're going with a 6-foot grass verge. So no deviation at all from the cross-section. Sidewalks on both sides of the roads all around the neighborhood. No variance requests. Much larger subdivision than we saw on the first one tonight, but still very, very straightforward. And I said we'd get to that later, but I think I'd already shown that. No, we're recommending approval of the preliminary plat.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. All right, questions for staff?
Is it normal for a subdivision that's going to be that big to only have 2 means of egress or ingress to it? Seems like, is that enough?
We really don't, and the city engineer can correct me if I say anything incorrect here, but we really don't want, this would meet the fire codes of having 2 points of entrance. And there are other roads that are down here. We would prefer not to have more points of ingress and egress, say down in this area. There's gonna be stormwater here, but there's also other roads that are down in here. Engineering looked at this a great deal and determined, and worked with the developer on this, that it would probably, we had talked about maybe having another point of ingress or egress. And between the engineer and, city engineer and developer, we believe that 2 is a preferred method here. And it meets the requirements by the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rutter, we've seen a lot of developers work in green space into the neighborhoods we've been seeing recently. Was there discussion about that?
Well, the R2C zoning does not have the open space
Yeah.
requirement. Now, there is a great deal of open area here. Now, that's going to be for proposed board for stormwater and those types of areas, but, or those sorts of things. But there is no open space requirement. Now, if they have any other plans, that's not, we don't see that on the preliminary plat, but it's not required by the zoning district.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Is anyone here to speak for or against this proposal? Okay, seeing no one stepping forward, I'm going to close the floor for public comment. All right, any further discussion amongst us?
I was just concerned about that's a lot of houses.
Yep.
You know, coming out on 2 streets, so, but if it meets the fire code and everything, I'm fine with that. I like the idea of having sidewalks on both sides of the road.
I like the idea of not having variance requests.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move. I'll second.
Any discussion about the motion or clarification? The motion is to approve the preliminary plat for Indian Ridge Road development. Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oshenbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Ms. Voren, I think you're up next. Is anyone here on the next topic, which is the Brown Mill Apartments? If they want to move over this way, if there's empty seating, you're welcome to shift your seating.
I'm going to give everybody a second.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just give us just a second or two. Bringing us all up.
Yeah. My wife bought me this,
Oh, really?
and she was trying to give me a hint. You love it. Drink more water. Yeah.
It's water, huh?
It's water, yeah. Yeah.
That company.
Yeah, from my physician wife, yeah. Well, I think, you know, she got.
Thank you all for your patience as we try to work through this large meeting.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Okay, Ms. Moore, please go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. In front of you, I have rezoning request number 1091 for the Browns Mill Road Apartments. And this request is to go from R2, which is low-density residential, to RP3 and RP5, which are all planned residential districts. Now, this portion of Browns Mill where the apartments are going are where Chickasaw Street meets Browns Mill, right over behind the interstate and kind of back behind Peoples Street and the new roundabout that went in. Now, the request was originally to go for R5 on all acreage with 3 and 4 story buildings, 3 stories stepping down into 4 stories on the whole property. However, in order to kind of accommodate some of staff's concerns about this neighborhood right here and abutting right next to Sequoia, which is existing single-family homes. We actually worked to kind of reframe that request into RP3 up at this top portion and RP5 at the lower portion. As you'll see, this whole parcel is separated by Browns Mill Road. And so the request, while it is one parcel, it is separated by that road, and so the top part is to go RP3, and the bottom part is to go RP5. Now, the reason behind this is the RP3 has a height requirement, and it limits buildings to be 35 feet. The RP5 does not have that requirement. It goes up to 65 feet. So we thought that by creating a less dense and more restrictive zoning district up by the top that abuts the single-family neighborhood, it kind of minimizes the impacts on those existing homes there. So now I'm going to get into the concept plan. The concept plan consists of 8 buildings that are 1 and 2 bedroom market rate apartments. This upper portion is going to have 2 buildings, and it's going to have 42 units total. That is a density of approximately 4.8 dwelling units per acre. Now, the RP3 allows up to 8.5 dwelling units per acre. And I do want to make a note that this calculation considers this whole point, all of this open space. And Mr. Oceanbine, as you said earlier, this is the open space. So that is incorporated into that. And I would like to also note that that's kind of the intent of the RP zoning. The RP zoning is made to give a little bit more flexibility to developers and density when they do provide open space. And in this case, it's preserving a geological feature that really isn't developable anyway. Now, moving down to this lower portion right down here, this has 6 buildings with 100 units on it, and it backs up to the interstate. So this is where a lot more of that intensity for this project is coming from. I would also like to note that, as I mentioned earlier, this is the piece that has buildings that are going to be 3 stories that step down into 4 stories. This upper piece is going to have buildings that are 2 stories facing that single-family residential that step down into 3 stories because of the way that the slope works. So it's working with the terrain to kind of face the single family as if it's a 2-story building. I would also like to note that Chickasaw Street right here is a private street at this time. And we ran a calculation using a multiplier that the Johnson City Schools used, and we generated 22.82 students from this development. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have 29, 30 kindergartners. It means that over the course of K through 12, you're going to have about 30 students come from this development. Here are a few renderings and elevations. So this is an example of the building that I was talking about that's going to be on that RP3 upper portion. So as you'll see, this is the 2-story part, and it steps down like this into the 3-story part. So this will be that back side, and this will be the side that faces Browns Mill Road. I took a few photos of the site earlier today, and this is Chickasaw Street. So I would like to point out that it is a private street, and it is a bit narrow. So this is the city planning car. It is a great Ford Escape. So you can see kind of how much room that takes up on the road. And this is as you're coming out of Chickasaw Street onto Browns Mill. And this is the portion of the parcel that I was talking about that's being preserved as open space. So you can see right here that they're not going to be touching that. It'll remain wooded. A few more photos. This is again down by where Chickasaw meets Browns Mill. You can see that slope, that gentle slope that I was talking about that the developer is trying to work with. This is up at the top of the hill. So again, these are the single-family homes over on Sequoia. And again, you can kind of see the way the terrain just slopes down like that. Over here, again, this is another angle. This is the site in a whole. This is the RP3 portion up here, and the RP5 portion that is down there. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the height of the buildings. So the way that the code reads building height is the average elevation up to the midpoint of the roof. So what that's going to look like on this building is going to be this point right here. This is the midpoint elevation to the midpoint of the roof. Now this measurement is 34 feet and 2 inches, which that meets the code requirement. As you'll see on this side, this is the side that's going to face the single family. It's the 2-story side. It actually only measures 29 feet and 10 inches. This opposite side over here, the larger side that slopes down, that is going to measure 38 feet and 6 inches. And those two averaged together is how you get the 34 feet and 2 inches I also want to take a moment to talk about traffic. And I am in no way a traffic expert, but we do have some of those in the room. So if there's some questions on that later, I can direct that the right way. But I'm going to do my best to work through this. So the predicted number of trips and the AM peak generated from both sides is 43. The predicted number of PM peak traffic is 36. You can see right now that Browns Mill Road currently is experiencing 775 morning peak trips. And the afternoon, it's currently experiencing 843. So again, you're looking at adding about 43 trips to that morning peak and about 36 trips to that afternoon peak. Now, there are some concerns from the engineers and city staff over how this is going to play out. And that's going to work itself out when it gets to the construction phase. And that's going to be in the form of turn lanes, deceleration lanes, that kind of thing. But it is on city staff's radar that that is a little bit concerning in how that traffic is going to play out. However, at this stage, it doesn't necessarily need to be finalized and decided of, we're going to have this specific turn lane. This is just a general concept plan, so it's meant to kind of give an idea, and those details will be worked out between the developer and staff. In front of you, I have a current land use map that shows that it is vacant land, and the future land use map does predict this to go residential. Here are a few plans and policies. You'll see namely that it's supporting development and housing and a variety of housing within Johnson City. There was a neighborhood meeting held last night, and there were several people in attendance, and I believe that several of them are here to speak more to their concerns. But in general, the overall concerns that we were getting were traffic on both Browns Mill and Chickasaw, and then the density massing of the buildings, so kind of what I explained earlier, and still some concerns about those buildings next to the residential. Staff is recommending approval. This is a vicinity map, but I actually think that I'm going to leave you guys back on the concept plan. And if you guys have any questions, I am happy to either answer them or direct them to the correct staff member.
Thank you very much, Ms. Board. Questions for staff?
Notice in our packet that it says average annual daily trips has not been collected, and yet you gave us data. Is that?
Yes, I got that today.
Okay.
Hey, will they need to put up some kind of boundary, or what's it called?
Barrier.
Barrier
Buffers?
between the house, the buffer between the house and the
Yes,
apartments?
there is a type 1 buffer, and it is shown on their plan right here.
Okay.
What are the open space areas?
This entire piece right here.
Okay. There's not any secondary ones? Oh, yeah. Are there any other secondary ones closer to the housing?
They do have a pool and a dog park. I'm not really sure if that meets your definition of open space, but those are community amenities. But other than that, no.
Okay.
Traffic does concern me as well, but I guess that's not our issue to deal with this time. We'll deal with that later, right? Okay.
Clarify that.
It'll come back to us when, right?
Well,
Or
it
will
won't necessarily come back to you guys. What I was meaning by that is that I just don't want us to get pinned up on details with this concept plan of trying to solve the traffic problem. I wanted you guys to be aware that staff is aware that it is a problem, and that between staff and the developer, there will be a solution worked out that accommodates that. Whether that is in the form of deceleration lanes, left turn lanes, kind of what that looks like. Staff is aware that it's a problem, but that's not necessarily a problem that we decide on at this level.
So when does it get decided? I mean, when it goes to the city
In
commission?
the construction plan process.
Okay.
Is
The
Brown-
preliminary, or, well, we get a concept plan, but then would anything come back to us?
No.
Okay.
And and I don't want you guys to not consider traffic in this decision.
Right.
Really what I'm trying to emphasize is that I don't want you guys to try to directly address the problem by creating a solution to say, oh, they need this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that a Browns Mill Road, is that an arterial collector at that point?
It's a collector.
It's a collector.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a it's a busy, I mean, it's one of the high-traffic roads in that area, or, I mean, what are the categories again that the city has for roads?
Arterial, collector. I know that there's a local road. I think that traffic could probably speak a little bit better to that than me.
Okay.
And they are here, and maybe they could better explain sort of where they're at on the traffic concerns.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, please. Please do.
Peyton did an excellent job with her presentation. I want to reiterate one element of her presentation, that is that this is a rezoning. And so this is someone asking to change the zoning on the land from X zoning to Y zoning. And all the entitlements, all the rights and entitlements of that old zone, if it gets approved, go to this new zone, right? And then, but specifically tied to our zoning code is this requirement that you have a concept plan. Now, in the past, we didn't used to have concept plans. It was just called a straight rezoning. So the current zoning right now, someone would come forward and say, I would like to rezone to multifamily zoning. And you all might ask, well, what are you proposing to do on that property? And in the past, they would say, we're going to do whatever the code allows me to do under that new zone. Well, that obviously didn't fly very well with the public. That didn't fly very well with the boards and commissions. And so we wrote into the code this idea of a concept plan. And the concept plan shows you all, and it shows the public, this is what the developer's looking to do. We're not yet at the level of detail of engineered drawings. It's a concept. And so if this gets approved, if the rezoning gets approved, then that concept is permanently married to the rezoning. It's bound forever to the rezoning. And if that plan ever changed, it would have to come back here again as well as go to the city commission. Regarding the traffic concerns, traffic is absolutely a part of this conversation, needs to be. But the details surrounding how long does the decel lane need to be? Exactly which side of the road does there need to be a decel lane on? Does there need to be a left turn lane? All these exact level of details that are tied to our engineering codes, those get worked out in the engineering phase. But absolutely take into consideration the traffic counts on Browns Mill, the traffic counts that this will generate, and Ms. Voren provided those to you. Now, you're going to hear from the public, too, their concerns about traffic on Browns Mill, cut-through traffic on Chickasaw, people may be trying to get from Browns Mill over to North Roan. And so certainly consider all those, but the minute details of what does the turn lane look like, what does the decel lane look like, we'll work those details out later. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Will Chickasaw be improved to a public right-of-way?
If the developer intends to make the road public and dedicate it, yes, it will need to be.
Okay.
So the developer has to do that.
Correct.
Okay. That road, my concern is that road is too narrow. Especially if you start to have kids in those apartments, there's going to be school buses involved. There's no way a school bus can go on that road right now with another car. That's my concern, but I get it that you guys are going to work all that out.
And you guys are welcome to hear from engineering regarding Chickasaw if you'd like.
Sure.
Love to.
Yeah, 30,000-foot view from them would be helpful.
So I'm Wallace McCulloch, city engineer. So yes, we would require that the road be brought up to standard so that school buses or regular traffic through there would be able to get back and forth without issues. Now,
Does the developer have to pay for that, or does the city do that?
no, the developer would pay for that as
Okay.
part of the improvements to that.
Okay.
If he wants to dedicate it to make it a public street, I mean, it's private now, but if he wants to make it public, he would have to bring it up to those standards.
Thank you.
Can he leave it as a private street?
I think so.
So he can do this development and
Well-
not make that street public, and it stays just like it is? Is that what I just heard?
That's my understanding, yes.
So it is a private road, and he could keep it private. And theoretically, if he wanted to, he could cut off Chickasaw, where it no longer becomes a road that is a cut-through road. However, he is going to work with staff, and that process is going to come. I don't think that that's favorable in staff's opinion or the developer's opinion. And in that case, their frontage would be Browns Mill Road, and Chickasaw would almost serve as an access road, if that makes sense.
So it would be essentially an extension of the other improvements that are there, which are private, roads in the development, the parking areas and the other feeder roads that kind of go to, those are private, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the developer is here to speak on his intentions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Any other questions for staff? I'm going to go ahead and open the public forum for this. Is anyone here to speak in favor of the proposal? Could you please come forward? And your name and address, please, sir?
Harry Pelos. I live at 800 Fairview Road in Asheville, North Carolina.
Welcome to Johnson City. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I found out yesterday, after we had submitted, that
Could you get closer to the
that
microphone?
Chickasaw is a private road.
Yes.
It was up in the air when we did the plan. And there were two elements, and one is there's a private cemetery, a family cemetery. That's actually part of the property. We didn't know that. We're going to give that obviously to the family that's there. And I think the smart way to go about this is, you see where we have a side street coming off of Chickasaw?
Mm-hmm.
If we take Chickasaw, bring it up to the 16-foot wide city standards and improve that road, I'm going to tell you right now what's twirling in my head, because I've had 24 hours on it, is then there'd be redundancy, to get rid of that little street and simply have two driveways coming off of Chickasaw into the parking areas. And then we could put the 16-foot wide street, dedicated, and hopefully, if it meets city standards, just dedicate it to the city.
So your intent would be to meet city standards?
Well, if we give it to you guys, we'd have to.
Yes, sir.
At a minimum, even if it stayed private, it does need to be widened for the exact reasons that you just alluded to. So we'd at least get the minimum width of the 16 feet. We'd get rid of the little side road that we would add, pull those driveways in off of that, keep it a private street, and give the neighborhood an easement. I'm fine with that. We do need to improve it because it's too narrow, but I would like to get rid of the redundancy of the two roads. We'll just take those dollars and put them on the Chickasaw.
My question might be for the engineer, but on that 16-foot street, does he just have to go and improve it up to to his development? Or how far does he have to improve it?
I think if he made it a public street, we would require it to go all the way through.
Okay,
Because
good.
it doesn't make sense otherwise.
All right, good.
Yeah.
What may not be shown on there is we did agree with staff to do some sidewalks. And if we improve Chickasaw, get rid of the little feeder road that we're showing now, then we would put sidewalks up that street. And on that side of Brownsville down to the end of our property line. And an important point that did come up, not to create any more headaches for myself, but there were some good points brought up by the public yesterday. And one is, we're going to need to work out with staff how to get pedestrian traffic across the street, across Brownsville from the two sections, because the amenity package is up on the low-density piece. And that's something we're going to just need to work out with them, of how to get, whether it's a pedestrian crossing with a flashing light or something when you go. We need to find a solution to that because it's a problem for our residents. We want them to be as safe as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else here to speak for the proposal? Okay, anyone here to speak against the proposal? Okay, if you can sort of amongst yourselves decide what order you want to start, and I'll ask you to please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And your name and address, please, sir.
I'm Randy Moik, and I live at 219 Shadowwood Drive. I've been there probably almost 30 years, and it's been a great neighborhood, except for I listened on the way here, Hotel California, where you can get in but you can't get out, and it's exactly like that. Right now, certain times of the day, it's very tough to get out of Shadowwood and make a left-hand turn, and this would only make it. Most of these people here in this neighborhood are probably going to go over to Food City to shop because that's where we shop. And so there's going to be a lot of grocery shopping and stuff like that that's going to head that way. Right now in Shadowwood, we have about 100 houses. This is over 140. So it's going to double the traffic, maybe even more than that. Right now, at certain times of the day, we're kind of white-knuckled to try to get out of there. And we're going to have to get more aggressive to get out of there with double the traffic. And I think if you approve this, you're going to see some wrecks. I think you're going to actually cause harm to people when you approve this. The other thing that I'm concerned about, too, is that our water pressure is not very good at our home. And I can't imagine it getting better if you allowed this to happen. So I'm very much against this. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Donna Hash, and I live at 209 Chickasaw Street. And first of all, I've been looking through this subdivision regulations and the codes for this zoning. I don't think the 16-foot pavement width is correct for a standard public road or private. I think that is too narrow. I went out and measured periodic different places on Chickasaw Street, and it's all 16-foot plus or minus. And I think just looking at a cross-section at a standard street cross-section, the pavement width itself is 21 to 25 feet wide. Lots of public roads here in town have a 2-foot curb and gutter, and also a sidewalk, at least on one side. Our street, Chickasaw, does not. The right-of-way ends up there at that top of the second 90-degree curve, the public right-of-way, and the rest of this is private down to Browns Mill Road. A question I have too, if the street is dedicated to the city, will they make those widening of the pavement and the improvements all the way through from Browns Mill to Sequoia? Because that's how the 16-foot width is that long all the way through the Chickasaw Street. That's just a concern of mine. Right now, there's such heavy traffic through there that it's dangerous to even get out and walk. Some of our residents there have asked for speed tables before to try to calm the traffic flow, the speeding and stuff through there with no, we didn't have any help with that. So if you're not going to close the road and keep this as either private or public right-of-way all the way through, we would very much like to have speed tables through there because there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and it just would make it a lot safer. And of course, my concerns too are the traffic. It's the intersection right there at Chickasaw onto Browns Mill. There's a sight distance issue to the right there when you're pulling out from Chickasaw Street onto Browns Mill. I think that ought to be looked into. Definitely turn lanes into these new developments. I also have a question too. I didn't see any of the open space calculations on the map, on the plan here, and the fact that you have to cross either a access easement or a public right-of-way to get to the open space, is that allowable? I mean, to me, the idea of open space is meant to be close to the dwelling where you can use it and not have to, cross a major collector highway.
Ma'am, I need to interrupt you. You've had your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Can you wrap up, please?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. My name's Steve Batoff. My wife and I live at 212 Chickasaw Street. We've lived there for the past 41 years. The people, homeowners on both sides of me are some of our original homeowners that were there when the complex, or when the subdivision was built in 1960s. Some have been there for 50 years. Sequoia Heights and Shadowwood are bordered on the east by North Roan, which is a main street throughout Johnson City, and on the west by Browns Mill, which is a major connector road for commuting, shopping, and emergencies. On our east, right across the street, is Indian Trail Middle School. A couple of 100 yards down the road from that are two large grocery stores that serve the community. On the west side, on the Browns Mill side, within a half-mile to a mile radius, there's a hospital and major health care facilities, Lowe's and a Home Depot, restaurants, Sam's Clubs, Walmart, Interstate 26 intersection, the State of Franklin intersection, and then there's other businesses. Rezoning 14 acres of field off Browns Mill in the middle of all this radius for an apartment complex of 142 units, 8 buildings, 275 parking spaces. It's just a model for gridlock. Public transportation, according to what I read, bus service is at Sequoia and North Roan, and I read that the users of public transportation would walk through the neighborhood on Chickasaw Street a quarter mile to get that service. It's clear that the developer proposing this concept plan has no vision for Johnson City, no knowledge of this area. His only knowledge of the area is from a limited observation that he'd made at the street level and the property level. The developer's from another state. There's no community attachment. Solely anticipated profit is all he would gain from this. This apartment complex would be built on acreage with no consideration of what would happen to our neighborhood, and the resulting traffic congestion would absolutely happen. I've read the city's strategic plan on the continued development of our city. I've read it for a number of times. Primary to this plan is quality of place, where young families are safe with access to community services, and future-ready infrastructure to minimize the impact of city and the environment. It's not to create a problem. We cannot let eagerness of growth override our common sense, and rezoning under these circumstances should be denied.
Thank you, Mr. McCall.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Chris Pfeiffer, 212 Sequoia Drive. I am a property owner that directly adjacent to the proposed project. I want to thank you for the opportunity to voice my opposition to this planned project. And I'd also like to thank my neighbors, whom I stand in support of as they provide additional viewpoints on why this project would cause congestion and safety concerns, among others, and why this project is not appropriate for the location selected. Last night, we heard from the developer and the city staff that everything was being done to minimize impact to adjoining properties by keeping the upper area at a less dense RP3 status. While moving from R2 to RP3 is a drastic change on its own, the impact to the neighborhood is far greater than RP3 suggests. While it is accurate that the density is within requirements of the zoning code due to the untouched land across from the apartments being proposed, the area of land that is being developed is only 3¼ acres. With 42 units, that is the equivalent of 13 units per acre, an RP4 status. That is the real-world density impact that will be imposed on the adjoining properties should this project move forward. It is inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. In addition to housing density concerns, we discussed maximum height of the proposed apartments. RP3 allows for no more than 35 feet, and the developers have come in under that at 34 feet and 2 inches. No other dwelling in the adjoining neighborhood maximizes the heights requirements to this extent. As is the case with the housing density, the height takes advantage of zoning code definitions, which measures from average ground elevation to mean roof height, meaning that the proposed 44-foot height from ground to roof meets our requirements. And again, as is the case with housing density, the impact of the height on the neighborhood is far greater than suggested due to the sloping nature of the field. The developer's concept plans propose that Building 2 start at an elevation of 1714 feet. With a full height of 44 feet, Building 2 will max out at approximately 1760 feet. This is assuming that the developer can dig down 10 feet, which was admitted last night to being optimistic due to the underlying limestone. My house, which sits at 1720 feet, would have a maximum height 20 feet under Building 2, which would be built within 100 feet from my house. As an exercise this morning, I took a picture from approximately 1760 feet, the maximum height of the apartments, while standing on Sequoia Drive. The red line is the top of what's being proposed. My house sits dwarfed by the apartments that would loom over and be incompatible with the existing neighborhood. As a closing note, on the very root of this rezoning request, there has been some discussion on the family cemetery located at the top of the property. A read-through of the code indicates a cemetery is not permitted on RP3 zoning. I commend Mr. Pylos for his offer to deed the cemetery back to the family, which I would assume would remain zoned R2. However, I question the need to rezone a single 14-acre lot into 3 different zoning boundaries, all in an effort to best favor the developer while also serving as a detriment to the existing community. It is for these reasons and many more that time won't allow that I ask the Planning Commission to deny this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Virginia Pfeiffer. I live at 212 Sequoia Drive. One point of clarification that I could see some confused faces. So this section of Chickasaw Street is a private road, but it does attach to the remainder of Chickasaw Street, which would not be redeveloped. As others have mentioned, we already see a significant amount of traffic cut through the neighborhood in an effort to get from Browns Mill to North Roan Street quickly. The impact that has as a parent of 3 young children and watching individuals speed through our neighborhood, it does create danger and a hazard that Mr. Pylos has not effectively addressed by adding additional housing here. As others have mentioned, the designation from R2, low-density housing, to RP3 and RP5, some of our highest density offerings, is not consistent with the remainder of the neighborhoods. We're talking about Sequoia Heights and Shadowwood, the 2 immediately adjacent neighborhoods. But as you continue and persist around Browns Mill Road as it turns to Carroll Creek, the designation remains R2 until you get approximately 2 miles down the road to a new R4 development. Should the developer want and feel a strong need to develop a dense multifamily apartment complex in North Johnson City, there are actually other lots of land for sale actively zoned to R3. There's a 13-acre plot on Timberlake Road that could be considered for this development if it is beneficial to the citizens of Johnson City. There are similarly 2 additional large lots of land. One is around 17 acres, one is 20 acres at Boones Creek. The developer mentioned that part of the desire to develop this particular plot was the proximity to the interstate. Those two large lots actively for sale at Boones Creek are directly adjacent to the new exit that has been built and designated and designed to accommodate additional traffic. Like others, I share the concern of additional density in housing. Mr. Pylos did commend and say that the idea here was to attract more families, and that in his other developments, they see about 30% designed to families. I question that is the actual outcome because, again, these units are 1 and 2 bedroom units. These are not townhomes or condominiums, something that's really designed to increase the number of families in North Johnson City. One other consideration that may or may not be in the purview for this committee is that Browns Mill is actually the new zoning designation cutoff. So 50% of this complex would be zoned to Town Acres Elementary, 50% would be zoned to Lake Ridge. That zoning change just went into effect this July and already impacted 56 students. So as we think about adding additional housing right here, I would be curious to know the impact to the schools and whether or not these same students are going to experience an additional rezoning, or families who have chosen to purchase adjacent property to be in a specific school zone will then ultimately be impacted because of the considerations of the additional population. So in conclusion, I think the developer has worked very well with the city, but I don't think he has articulated the benefit to the neighboring communities to shift this from R2 to a much higher density designation at RP3 or RP5. Thank you.
Parker. That's all right. Take your time and be careful. We've got a commissioner in the same situation you're in.
Well, this is the second one, so I'm kind of used to it.
Okay.
Ron Hines, 219 Sequoia Drive. Been there, I bought 212 in 1984, raised that young lady there. Anyway, at the back of 219, we look straight into the field. If you do the math, let's keep it simple. They were talking about 40-some additional cars. When we left Chickasaw tonight, we waited for 13 cars to pass before we could pull out on Browns Mill at 5:34 p.m. The apartment's going to have 270-some parking spaces. That's about 540 people potential a day to enter Browns Mill. Now, if they can magically calculate less than that, and we can all, as Mark Twain said, statistics are whatever. I just don't think that we can see this happening. We've been so blessed with the traffic circle that was put in down at Mountain View. It really made it flow much better. But when the interstate has an accident on it, heading towards Kingsport, Browns Mill is Interstate 2.0. It is still, doesn't move at all. You can see it for hours. So I please want you to consider the traffic. It's been expressed, so many things there. I just been there since 1984. This just doesn't fit the mold. It really doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Reed Bond, 105 Emerald Chase Circle. So I'm not from the surrounding neighborhoods from Chickasaw or Shadowwood. I'm from Carroll Creek Estates, so about a mile away from this this area here under development consideration for development. And so I don't. The other surrounding neighborhoods have not received notification of this significant change to the area. I happen to have a friend in Shadowwood that happened to receive one of these one of the notifications. So I'm here to voice the impact on not only the immediate 200 feet surrounding this area, but also the surrounding neighborhoods. So as has already been addressed with 275 parking spaces, the significant impact on both schools and traffic is going to be immense. I also disagree with the city's assessment on an additional 30 students and 40 trips per day. That seems very inconsistent with 275 parking spaces. On the topic of inconsistency, a dense apartment building is very inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. So as you have multiple one and two bedroom apartments, as they've discussed the concept, they seem to have shrunk the apartments down on one side but not the other. So what the impact is, or what's trying to be demonstrated is a lessening of an impact on the surrounding area, but there is still a very significant impact from A, the traffic, B, the schools, and then also property devaluation. So it's already been addressed that the developer here does not have a Johnson City vision, which I would agree with. And what's not been addressed is on the opposite side of this is you have I-26, and obviously that is the public's view of Johnson City. And so on the other side of this, the intent is to now, with this plan, have 65 feet of apartment buildings looming over the interstate, demonstrating what Johnson City looks like. And again, with that inconsistency, as we think about the entrepreneurial nature of this venture, which I applaud the entrepreneur that's pursuing this, but the impact in house devaluations surrounding this is going to be significant. And I don't know that all of the property values, but taking just Shadowwood and Carroll Creek Estates as the two benchmarks that I have, in Shadowwood, as you look at houses that are worth around $600,000, you can easily assume that such dense apartments would devalue those properties $100,000 apiece. And that impact across the 100 homes in Shadowwood would be about $10 million. Further away where I'm at in Carroll Creek Estates, we would also see, I mean, I mentioned it's only a mile away. We would also see a home devaluation where we've invested in those properties as well. With 120 homes in our neighborhood, we would likely not see the same sort of devaluation that Shadowwood would see, but even with a $50,000 devaluation, that would be another $6 million devaluation for property values surrounding this area. And so so I would plead that you please consider the inconsistency with this venture and reject this rezoning request.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak?
My name's Josh Gibbons. I live at 311 Shadowwood Drive. I would like to maybe just go back on this screen if it's possible. I don't know if I'm able to do that. Okay. Maybe it's forward. Sorry. I was wanting to get to your AADT data. There it is. I just want those numbers to sink in. When we talk about traffic on Browns Mill Road, it is labeled a high-speed arterial in Johnson City. You have Browns Mill and you have North Roan. Putting this type of a development on this road will lead to disaster. I truly believe that. And the reason we're meeting tonight in the concept plan is to look at these concepts and make a decision. Does this make sense or does it not? And I think you've heard tonight from a lot of people, it just doesn't make sense. Back in 2013, I think the city worked with the neighborhood of Shadowwood to look at a neighborhood plan. So that's 8 years ago, 9 years ago. That 5-year plan, looking at what they wanted to do, the number one grievance in that area 8 years ago was traffic. And we've grown since then. And now we're talking about putting something like this on Browns Mill Road. I just think it's a bad idea. We talked a little bit last night, but I don't think it was addressed, was flooding and how they were going to collect stormwater and other things. There is a house down near the roundabout that catches a lot of water, and I don't know where it's going to go from something like this, but that wasn't shown and wasn't discussed. Again, I just want to say that I think we deny this request. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a bad concept, and that's why we're meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caleb Maloney Steiner. I'm on 217 Sequoia Drive, so I'm also an adjoining property on that top part. In my opinion, as members who are trying to do best for our city, I think one thing you guys should be asking yourselves is if you were owning a property adjoining this, would you want to improve it in this position? And if the answer is no, then how is it fair for you to approve it if you don't have a property there? the property devaluation, I think, should be something that we're concerned about, as has been mentioned. Last night at the public hearing with the developer, one of my neighbors up the road, who's also adjoining, mentioned that he's really concerned about that because he has some medical bills that he needs to pay, and he was planning to sell soon. And before this, my neighbor could even finish his sentence, the developer cut him off and said, "No, I bet you your property's gonna go up," and basically just dismissed this very real concern about the situation. Now, I think if we do approve this as a city, that property devaluation should be something that you guys prove to the surrounding area that it's actually gonna go up or not go down in order to approve this. And I haven't seen anything about that. We're just going off of the developer's word that he thinks it'll go up, which obviously he has a very invested interest in putting this in. So I was not very happy with the developer's response in that way to my neighbor. And I think that speaks to potentially if he does care about our community or not. Personally, if this area, aside from all the traffic concerns, were to have development, I would like to see someone who actually cares about our city, who's invested in it, and wants to work to make decisions that are best for the immediate surrounding community as well as the overall impact to Johnson City. And I haven't been hearing those things yet. I asked the developer yesterday, and he said we need more places for rent, which may be true. But I think you guys, or the city commission, and our city owes it to us residents to discuss these things and bring it up with us before this gets all the way through. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ian Darling. I live at 227 Shadowwood Drive. I actually back up to this piece of property, as I think one of the other people here does as well. I've lived there for 28 years. I think the other gentleman was close to 30. I've also lived in Johnson City since 75. I think I'm not going to go into all the things that people have already said because they're great points. There's two or three things, though. All the surrounding area is all R2. It's all single family. We moved there and bought that property because we wanted to live in a single family dwelling. And I don't really want multifamily dwellings sitting in my backyard. I don't see them like some of these other people do. I would hate that, but they're still sitting in my backyard. I don't see any way it can't drop property values. I'd be very surprised because everything around it is single-family dwelling. I think that the other thing is, and it's been mentioned multiple times, the traffic is horrible on Browns Mill. I was president of the Homeowners Association when we did all that work that was mentioned a minute ago, and that is the number one concern. Woodbriar is cut through already in a big way. Chickasaw is already used as a cut through. When Indian Trail School's coming out, people come through Shadowwood. I could see easily a whole bunch of people going through that way. At the rush hour times, it's actually, I mean, my wife almost got in an accident this afternoon pulling out of Browns Mill because of the traffic density coming down Browns Mill already. And we can talk about putting in little turn lanes and stuff at that development, but it doesn't change the fact that the amount of traffic going down Browns Mill is going to go up. I think those are the two major concerns specifically there. The other thing is, and I think the developer mentioned this, you've got two areas, the pool's on one side, you're gonna have 40 kids they mentioned, they're gonna wanna go to the pool, and they're not all gonna be on the upside. I don't think putting a crosswalk there, I come up Browns Mill every day, and that's a pretty blank corner. Putting a crosswalk across Browns Mill so kids can run across the pool is probably not a great idea. So I think there's multiple safety concerns, and our property values are our big concerns. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Bender, and I live on 201 Chickasaw Street. My concern is traffic, absolutely, because Browns Mill's height, it just always congested. But more than that, it's Chickasaw Street. I live on the corner of Chickasaw and Sequoia. So when you take I'm on the corner, and you take a left, right down the hill is Roan Street. We have one stop sign, it's on our corner. Hardly anybody ever stops there, because then these are the people that are cutting through the neighborhood. They're speeding through, and they're just trying to slide over and make that cut to Roan Street. We have a group home across the street from us too, kitty corner on Sequoia. And emergency vehicles, I guess back up to, you know, how narrow Chickasaw is coming up into our neighborhood. It doesn't get any wider going down through the neighborhood. So sometimes people can't, you can't have two cars on the road at the same time. If there's somebody making a delivery or somebody doing, you know, yard work and stuff, you have to take turns trying to move around each other because you can't have two cars pass. We've had ambulances, fire trucks, different EMS vehicles come through, and that's a great difficulty as well because of the narrowness of the streets, maneuverability, and then traffic becomes even more because there's no place you can go. So this is just a real concern to us, that people in the neighborhood have the ability to be safe. Child safety, huge thing. In our neighborhood, it's difficult to take walks because people do come just speeding through. And it's curving, it comes down the hill real fast and then around the corner. Again, when you talk about the development, yeah, you're gonna have to have some kind of walk across Browns Mill. That is not a safe road. That is not a place that you're gonna be able to do anything that's gonna really guarantee safety of people trying to cross the road to get to the amenities of that property. So just a little bit more, you know, beyond Chickasaw and in the neighborhood, it would have a major impact on us. And we're a small neighborhood. We're a small, single-family neighborhood, and I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Fisher. Anyone else here to speak? Please come forward.
I'll take a turn real quick. Thank you. Name is Tom Yo. I'm at 208 Chickasaw, and in the spirit of compromise and in the spirit of giving the developer the ability to have an off-ramp for the investment he's made, the major amount of heartburn is created by the area that's to the upper right-hand side. If he worked with staff and brought the amenities over to this side, left that other side alone, brought the amenities over here, reduced the density from 4 stories or 5 stories, however tall it is, reduce that down to whatever it is on the other side, it seems like he would have something to work with staff and bring back to this committee with a more verifiable ability to address traffic, to address safety, to address schools, to address the cut through on emergency vehicles, fire trucks, whatever, and so forth. So it's just a thought. The developer has other options, and I think if he worked with staff, he could maybe get a little bit more buy-in than 0. I see 0 in this room that's actually supporting his. So
Thank you.
just an off-ramp there for you guys and for the developer and for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak? Yes, sir.
My name's Dennis Eola. I live at 106 Sequoia Drive.
What did you say your last name was?
Zeoli.
Zeoli.
I just wanted to add that I'd like to see it stay zoned as R2 because we have less R2 to develop single-family homes, and there's a shortage of single-family homes in the city, and no one here wants the zoning changed. So leaving it, I think, would be the best way to go. And two, has been a trend in Johnson City of zoning from, changing zoning to multi-unit housing. And this trend's been going on for about 5 years. And it's not quite 2 to 1. It's saying per unit. But these statistics came from the census information. So we have, let's see, total single units in the last 5 years has been 2,815, and multifamily units has been 4,293. Now, that's not counting, say, in apartment complexes, that's one unit, one apartment. So that, the national average for single-family homes has been less than, or 60% or more throughout the whole country. Currently in Tennessee, it's 67% of the properties are single-family dwellings. So anytime you change anything from R2 to multifamily, you're just denying someone a home. You're denying someone a single-family home. So I like to just see it, keep the door open for the American dream for other people like us to have that single-family home.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
thanks for your
Ziola.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak? Please come forward or stand up. Okay, I'm going to call the public comment closed. I also want to make a reference to the public of items we've received electronically. We have a letter here from Mr. Bultoff, a petition signed by a good number of people that all are from Sequoia Drive and Chickasaw Street. A letter from an L. Pierce that has attached photographs. So this will go into the public record. So the public comment's closed. All right, discussion amongst the commission.
My concern is, somebody mentioned the water retention. I was going to ask somebody over there, is that being addressed at all, or do we have any concerns about that, or what's happening with that?
They'll have 2 stormwater devices, and they'll be the underground devices on both sides. So yes, stormwater is addressed.
What about the water pressure
You have to
issues that
speak
was
into the
mentioned?
mic, please.
I'm sorry. What about the water pressure issues that were mentioned? Were y'all aware those were going on in Shadowwood?
I'm going to let Travis speak to that.
Our maintenance department would be happy to evaluate any existing water pressure concern in, I can't remember which neighborhood that was mentioned. I will say that we do have a robust water system in this area. We have a 12-inch water main along Browns Mill Road, as well as a 12-inch water main on North Roan Street, and an interconnected grid within the subdivision to the north and west of this. And we have done fire flow tests and within this area in connection with this, with the evaluation of this property. And it verifies what I just said. We did a fire flow test here along Browns Mill Road, and we got 620, I've got it here with me. We got over 600 GPM, a static pressure of 60 PSI, and a residual of 50. So we have a lot of water in the area, but if anybody has a specific concern in an existing location, we'd be happy to evaluate that for them.
Thank you, Travis.
No problem.
The other question or concern that I've got is there any way that the city, I do have the same thoughts about people crossing Browns Mill Road. Can you help me remember which one of those is going to have the pool and the dog park, the upper or the lower?
the pool is right here and the dog park is right here, and this is at the concept level. So there's a chance that as we work this out with the developer, that were to change, and, you know, potentially there's an amenity on both sides that gets moved to only one. You know, how that looks is, you know, something that will get worked out. But at the moment, the pool is on the upper portion and the dog park is on the lower portion.
Okay. Could the city require them to do some kind of like a walk bridge or something to allow, because, I mean, no offense to parents, but I know what happens in the summertime. When the kids want to go to the pool, they're going to go to the pool or whatever. And parents are busy, they're just going to let them go. And, you know, my concern is for the safety of those children walking that street. Is that been a thought or any kind of concern for the city?
Honestly, we're not at that level of detail yet. I mean, the concern is obviously there, you know, for pedestrians crossing, but we are not at the specific point of talking about maybe creating a bridge. However, if a plan like this were to move forward, that is something that will get worked out.
My concern is that, you know, it's hard to separate everything. You know, I mean, the concept plan, it works, you know, but without all the other details, I don't think it works. You know what I'm saying? And so it's hard to not take all that into consideration, because, I mean, I guess we just have to have confidence in the city that they're going to require all these things, all these improvements to be made to make sure that the traffic's going to flow good, that kids are going to be safe and all that. But that's where I'm struggling with that part of separating it, because in my opinion, after listening to all these people, their number one concern is the traffic, you know, and so we're supposed to look at this concept and agree on this concept and not take the traffic into consideration, which is all these people's concern.
Well, you can take the traffic into consideration, and my apologies if I misspoke or you guys misunderstood what I was attempting to say, but you should absolutely take the traffic into consideration, especially this slide right here, if we can get back to it. Especially this slide right here. I was just trying to say, don't get bogged down in what the improvements are going to specifically look like to the site. But you should absolutely take into account the fact that there are going to be 43 additional cars in the morning peak and 36 additional cars in the afternoon peak.
Let me go ahead.
Yeah, just to, that number, and correct me if I'm wrong, the traffic people, that's a peak number. That is not an
Yes.
estimate of the total trips generated by any complex or anything. That is a peak traffic, which is the load that's put on during the peak times of use at that moment in time. So evening commute, morning commute, back and forth. Just to clarify, that's not an estimate of the total trips per day or anything like that.
Yes, that is correct.
Could you please define your AM peak adjacent street?
So the 43 number on there is the AM peak hour. It's during a 1 hour
A
period.
1 hour block of time.
Yeah, 1 hour block of
Probably
time.
7 to 8.
Do we have a time for that, what that 1 hour is?
It would be, I would guess probably 7 to 8.
Okay.
And probably 5 to 6 or 4:30 to 5:30, something like that.
It's
Now, the other
defined by the
numbers-
institute. You know, it's
Yeah,
defined by the ITE.
Yeah, Anthony Todd gave me those numbers, and I wish I knew, I can't remember what those numbers are, but the hours. But now, keep in mind too, that the AM peak hour for traffic now on Browns Mill Pike is 775. That's what goes up and down for that peak hour in the morning, and 843 in the evening. So they're adding, 5%. So it is an add, there's no question, but those are pretty big numbers for those peak hour times as well.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough.
You know, I think there is a general need in Johnson City for, a lot of people are moving here. And there's a general need for housing. R2 is doing amazing in our community. We are building homes and selling them before you can even put a box in the front door in R2 right now. And I drive this road quite a bit. I'm in this area of town a lot. And at a 30,000-foot view, I feel like this exact project is why this panel exists. It doesn't fit in here. It just doesn't. You know, I looked at the traffic patterns, but at the end of the day, it really came down to, as someone that's living in this community and drives in these communities, does this zoning change make sense in this area right now? And to me, it does not. You know, so with that said, I propose a motion to not approve the Browns Mill Apartments plan for rezoning 1091.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion about the motion? Any clarification of the motion?
Just before we put this to a vote, I would like to hear from development on, and I agree completely with what you've said, but I do also think that there is a need in our community for affordable housing. There's a need in our entire state for affordable housing. And that can change depending on people's definitions of what that is. But I know that most people include apartments into that category of affordable housing options for people who cannot, for various reasons, qualify to buy a home. And so I would like to hear just from development, and this is something that's going to continue to keep coming up in front of this board every time it comes up, partially for NIMBY, not in my backyard, partially for, you know, we have a lot of roads, and Browns Mill is a very heavily trafficked road. I drive Browns Mill every single day. I know how busy it is. I can't imagine being one of those people that, with a driveway that connects directly to Browns Mill Road, that would be a nightmare. So, you know, I think it continues to be an issue that comes up with almost every apartment complex or any kind of higher density development proposal that the city gets. And I don't know if you all disagree with that, but it seems to be we get a common response, which I understand completely. So I kind of want to hear from y'all what are the existing options for potential higher density development that's not single family home, which is the vast majority of our development here in the city.
So, first of all, you're exactly right, and this is not unique to Johnson City. This is unique, or this is the common theme really across the country, and that is, except for some of your older Rust Belt cities and even some of your older cities that were developed up in the Northeast, or like Chicago, areas like that, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, New York, that developed essentially from the core outwards, where you had high-rise multifamily development. And then, as we know, we don't need to get into the whole spiel on Planning 101 and how the suburbs were developed. But in communities here that are typically more rural and southern, it was not common to have the multifamily come first. You really had a small core downtown that was mainly for commerce, and then you had single-family subdivisions develop, and that was the primary form of residential in small, more rural southern communities like ours. And so you're exactly right. It's a very normal type of development pattern. What's happening is we are growing now at a rate that is exceeding growth patterns that we've seen for the last 30 years. Just in the last 10-year census, we've already grown at over 12%, about 12.7% growth between 2010 and 2020. Predictions are that we will exceed that 12.7 again in the next 10 years. So the South is, as kind of crazy as it sounds, the new frontier. There are there is massive migration continued from the north and from the west into the south. And so the south is the new frontier, and there's a lot of land here. And so we're experiencing what is unfortunately fairly common across the southeast. Now let's kind of zero back in on Johnson City. As I've heard from some of the local builders and developers in this community, all the good land's gone. And there's some truth to that in terms of land that is relatively flat, land that can be relatively or easily served by water and sewer, that's not encumbered by some environmental feature, whether that be a ridge or flood. So all the good land's gone. And so what we have are these infill sites, and this would be considered an infill site. Now, we have a shortage of housing in this community. We have a shortage of housing across the country. But we absolutely have a shortage of housing in this community for both market rate as well as affordable. Absolutely on the affordable side, and that's a conversation that we will have with you and the City Commission moving forward on ways to tackle affordable housing. This is a product that is meeting a housing need that's at the market rate level, and it's proposed along a collector road. And we've heard not only from the engineers, but we've even heard, anecdotally from the public that Browns Mill is a busy collector. I even heard the term arterial. I'd want to hear the clarification from engineering, but okay. It is a collector road, so that means that it falls in the hierarchy of roadways, it falls right below an arterial. So just for the general public's benefit, the roadway hierarchy is basically your interstate system is the highest, carries obviously interstate traffic, and then below that you have limited access highways, things like that. And then you get down to your arterials, which would be like State of Franklin, North Roan, and then you go from your arterials to your collectors. And the collectors do just that. They collect traffic from the neighborhoods. And then below the collector are your local roads. So the local road that goes, Chickasaw would be a local road. The local road that goes through Shadowwood. Those are all local roads that go directly to the driveway. And so a collector is meant to do just that. It's meant to collect vehicles. And based on information we've heard from the Public Works Director on a previous case, a collector road can sustain safely up to, and it's important to say up to, because it's dependent on a number of other factors, roughly 12,000 vehicles per day. Now, we've not heard total number of VPD on this. We've heard AM and PM peak, and then we've also been provided the ADT from the project itself. But the reason why they are focusing on AM and PM peak is because that's typically when you have that big charge onto the roadway, right? So outside of the peak, let's say you're 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, the traffic's going to be fairly nominal, right? And so that's why they focus on the AM and PM peak. So back to your kind of circling back, both market rate and affordable multifamily and single-family housing is needed in our community. It's needed in the Tri-Cities. It's needed in Tennessee. It's needed in North Carolina. This is a part of the country that is growing. And so what's being provided here is a product along a collector road. If, for example, and I'm going to make a comment from our comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan is the map for the community that you all adopt and that the City Commission ultimately adopts as well. The comprehensive plan indicates that if high-density residential is going to be located anywhere in the city, it should be located along a busy roadway, because immediate access to that roadway is what's important. What would be a very serious negative is if someone ever proposed high-density residential in the center of a neighborhood that was accessed by local roads. The comprehensive plan says do not ever do that. Do not send high-density residential through a local road. Because of this location along a collector roadway, that's why staff made the recommendation that they make. We're in a tough situation, but we are in a strong growth mode. And so these projects are going to keep coming, even if this one gets turned down. So y'all have done a great job. The public did a fantastic job tonight. I think everyone spoke very well and with different comments. And so this is, we are in that part of the country that is about to get it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
you.
very much. I'm sorry, the public comment's closed. I'm sorry.
I had one other question. Well, I'm going to let you go on because I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
We've got a motion on the floor to deny this request. Could I ask you, Commissioner Oceanbine, if you could expand on your motion to give a reason why you feel that we should deny this?
Absolutely. And first off, I'd like to thank the public for being here, as well as the developer. We need homes in Johnson City. This area is absolutely blowing up. We love it here. We love the mountains. We love the food. We love the people. We're very lucky to live here. One of the things that I look at in this position is that there has to be a Z factor when it comes to does something fit into the area. And when we zone areas and maps, we take in a lot of things into account why something is R2. And it has to do with the history of the neighborhood, how things are progressing in the area. And going from an R2 to a multi-floored apartment complex just doesn't fit in this area, in my opinion. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes down to opinion, and I hate that. As a physician, I like to work in numbers. I would love to look up here and see that traffic data, and it just be absolutely 100% clear that it doesn't work here. And I can tell you that is not why I made the motion I did based on traffic. It was from driving on that road, from living in this city, knowing where that location is. I would love more apartments in this town, and we've approved many, and we've approved some very recently that are close to town and rezoned. It's just in my heart, I don't feel like this area rezoning for this particular type of project. I would ask the developer to come back with something different that we do often, and we see that often. People coming back with newer projects that kind of fit the feel and the culture of the community, and I would applaud that. So I think that kind of goes to the motion.
Okay, thank
Chairman.
you very much. Who seconded this motion? Do you agree with that amendment to the motion?
Yes, I do agree that it doesn't fit into the development. And I would want to think that we would not sacrifice what we already have in order to just do something or provide something, that we look at the whole picture.
Thank you very much. Any other comments about the motion?
I'm torn with the motion because I do know the need. I personally have a lot of people that are looking for houses. They can't find houses, so they have to revert to, apartments and that kind of thing. I certainly appreciate, all the public that came in to speak. I certainly empathize with them. But the bottom line is we just approved something recently, if y'all remember, the big apartment complex over there where the
Knob
one-lane
Creek.
bridge is.
Yeah,
And if
Knob Creek.
anything's congested, my God, that area is. And so I'm torn, because I sympathize with every single one of these people, but also from a city standpoint, from a city development standpoint, we've got to have that growth. And then we'd have to have faith in the city, the engineers and the public works people to make the improvements that are needed to make everything function, correctly. But we're going to, like Preston said, we're going to see this time and time and time again, and we're going to, and there's always going to be people opposed to it. There's always going to be people that have their backyard is going to be up against the development. But the way this city of Johnson City is growing right now, we've got to take all this into consideration.
I think what I was actually going to ask, on the concept plan, what changes, and I think Peyton was in a very unenviable position of trying to kind of talk about this, the fact that we're not talking about specific changes to the road right there on the development property when we're talking about a concept plan. But what changes to the concept plan would necessitate it coming back before this body?
any significant amendment to an approved concept plan as determined by staff, i.e. change in use, increase in intensity or density, substantial change in building location, ingress and egress, or other changes that would negatively impact the surrounding properties shall be resubmitted to the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners for reconsideration and reapproval.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
So based on that, I recall the developer mentioning something about maybe that road going to Chickasaw and him taking that away. Would that have to come back to us if he changes that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, further discussion amongst us or for staff? Let's call the roll, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm so sorry. The only reason why I stepped in was because if the motion passes, we have a packed house. If the motion passes, the audience may erupt. And so it's important that we share now, while the room is quiet, that this is a recommendation to the City Commission. This will still go on to the City Commission, to the 5 elected officials, and it will be heard 3 different times by the City Commission. The first time it would go in front of the City Commission is April 7th, and then there would be 2 other readings after that. So it's important that the public know this is a recommendation,
Decision is not final.
and that this would still go to the City Commission beginning on April 7th. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Even if you say no?
Correct.
What does that mean if we say, if
If
we vote no?
We are making a recommendation to City Commission. They are the final decision maker, and they have 3 readings.
Yep.
But if we vote no, not to, for the.
That
still
recommendation
goes to
goes to
them.
the City
Okay,
Commission,
Okay,
but that is not binding on them.
all right.
Either way.
Also, just so you're aware, if this motion to deny does not pass, we have to have another
Another
motion.
motion, I understand.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, call the roll, Nicole, please.
Okay. Commissioner Aldridge,
Like I said, I'm very torn, and I sympathize with the public, but I also know the need for the city of Johnson City. So I am going to, we're voting to deny it, right?
Voting to deny.
you're either for denial or against
I'm
denial.
I'm against the denial.
Okay.
Don't shoot me.
Commissioner Bailey,
I'm for the denial.
all right. Commissioner Mays,
I'm voting no on the motion,
so you're for the denial?
against the denial.
Against the denial. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Oceanbine,
Yes,
for the denial.
for the denial.
Commissioner Rhodey,
I have some major issues with the overall site planning and a lot of loose ends that I think the public brought out. I don't think it's well developed. I cannot, in good conscience, vote for this rezoning. So what is that? A no?
Voting for
you're
the denial.
for the denial.
I'm voting for the
Okay.
denial.
All right, and Chairman Dagenhart.
I'm voting for the denial.
All right, so the motion to deny has passed.
I'd like to thank the audience for their patience as we went through this. This is not easy for us. You're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to leave if you'd like to. Take yourself home. Let's take a 5-minute break, please.
Thank you, God.
I need to stand up.
Ms. Hodges, I think you have our next item, number 4, up for discussion.
Yes, it's, as we ended the last one, there was a conversation about what concept plan amendments are. And when there are changes to a plan, they do come back before the planning commission and then the city commission. And how, so how that works, I'm gonna pull this up, is that it's not as long of a process. It only will come to the city commission, or sorry, the planning commission, and then go to the city commission for one reading because it has been read 3 times. This request in front of you has, is a request to allow 270 single-family homes. Previously, they were approved for 118 single-family homes and 178 townhomes. So this is a decrease in intensity, but there was enough changes to say that this is a significant enough to make a concept plan change. So I would like to give a little bit of history with this because this property has been undeveloped for the last 20 years. It was annexed into the city in 2002, and that's when it received its original zoning of RP2. And this was, at the time, called a generalized site plan, but it's the precursor to the concept plan. So this is what they proposed at that time. One of the, in that hearing, one of the issues that was raised was about connecting to Heritage Hills, which is a subdivision in the county. And there was a lot of, there was a petition and a lot of discussion around not making that connection. And we'll talk about that a little further. Next, in this line of how development occurs, after a concept plan is approved, the zoning is approved, it's been annexed, you head to construction. And that starts with a preliminary plat. This site was given preliminary plat approval in 2005, and a preliminary plat has a vesting of 3 years, and then there are additional requirements. If you do certain things, that vesting will extend to a certain amount of time. So as they were about to lose their vesting requirement, they came back to the Planning Commission in 2008 for an extension. Nothing changed on the plan, and this is the plan that was presented. But that vesting went away in 2011. So we are only concerning ourselves with the rezoning. However, as things have changed, there are certain things that come up in our discussions, or things that they may need to address when they come back for preliminary plat approval. So you will see this again for preliminary plat. The city commission will only see it one more time. So the development, this is all kind of tying it together with some other things we're going to talk about later tonight. The developer submitted their plan on the 15th as they needed to. We did our reviews. The timeline is as such that we did not receive a revised plan until yesterday. And so the plan that you have in your packet is different than the plan that I'm going to show you here. Not significantly different. They address staff comments, but I do want to make sure that it has some changes. So one of the comments, let's all hope that technology works and this does the way I want it to do. One of the, see there, maybe it didn't work the way I wanted it to, is that we needed a site data table. And so that is here. They've also included a cross-section just to kind of give you an idea of what typically will be with a street. One of the things that they had removed in the site plan that you have before you and that the public saw last night, and that is in the public realm, is that there was no connection to the existing street stub here. This is actually the stub, it's property. It's not really a stub, it's property into Heritage Hills. And so they are, as apparently talked about open space first. They've added two connections and have continued to maintain what the neighbors had wanted by not stubbing into this piece of property. They have provided for open space calculations. And so these are some areas of open space. It does meet their requirement. And then they've added what they need to for site distance. That's actually a preliminary plan comment, but they went ahead and put it on their concept plan. It's not necessarily needed. And you can see there are 2 entrances into Rockingham. They've added stormwater management because that's actually one of the significant changes from 2008 to now, is that they do have to accommodate for stormwater management. So we just wanted to make sure that that could fit on the site of what they were doing. To show you where some of the entrances are, and I'm not sure how I did this one. It's been a long day. So this entrance is here about it, and this entrance is here. Just to kind of show you along Rockingham. I don't know if anyone had a chance to go out and look. As far as street stubs, this is the existing street stub, and this is what this concept is here. And I want to get to that in just a second, but to kind of talk about a few things. So one of the things that I mentioned in the staff report was that there will need to be some flexibility, so to speak, on some of the internal workings in order to meet the codes that will come up in the preliminary plat process. For instance, there's some fire issues that might need to be addressed as far as access and providing maybe some different entrances. There might need to be some additional connectivity points because that's something that we have. This connection here, I don't necessarily, since it's not a public street, staff, I shouldn't say just me, staff doesn't necessarily feel that it needs to occur, so that can be maintained from the original approval. But this one does need to occur because it is an actual right-of-way. Now, the neighborhood meeting, which was held last night, similar to the meeting yesterday, or that we just heard, their neighbors will tell you exactly how they feel. But one of the things that kept coming up was about basically traffic and how to get out onto 36. And this is a video of what Heritage Hills is just in the middle of the day. So it's not a peak time or anything. And just to kind of give you an idea of Heritage Road, sorry, but coming out of Heritage Hills. It's 36. And then this is an example, this is kind of just a snapshot of what coming out of Rockingham would look like. And again, it's midday. But just to give you an idea of what the view looks like coming back towards town, of trying to make a left-hand turn. Current land use is vacant. Really, this has kind of all been decided, but we usually put this in here. It would be residential. There was concerns about traffic through the existing neighborhood, traffic at Heritage Hill and Rockingham Road, the connection into Heritage Hill, and then some notification, like how the public was notified. Those were some concerns that were brought up at the neighborhood meeting. And I'm just gonna go through this pretty quickly because we were making changes to this as 430, our legislative and land use committee. There does need to be a clarification of the rear yard, and there is something about in the open space ordinance that we can work out with the developer. Most of these we can work out how they intend to use their open space. But you may also want to consider a note that says some of this may change as far as to meet the requirements of the preliminary plat. That's also, and then I need to take that one up. I am here for questions. This is a lot of information for a change. Just an aerial view of the area.
All right, questions for staff?
When you go over the, how you're going to get into the subdivision again, show me that.
So let's go to there are two entrances on Rockingham. That's how most people will get to the site. The subdivision ordinance which is not what really is being decided at this point. We're kind of, if you want to think of books, we're sticking into the zoning book at this moment. But there's an existing street connection here, and so they would need to stub into that street.
Into the existing neighborhood?
This is Rockingham Meadows. So it's a different it's a different neighborhood. There are two neighborhoods. There's Heritage Hills and Rockingham Meadows. And Rockingham Meadows is inside the city limits, and Heritage Hills is in the county.
And this will be inside the city?
It already is inside the city.
So no stub into Rosewood Circle. No, it's not going to come into Rosewood Circle.
No, I don't. There could be some other opportunities. Either maybe this like there's something here. They could also stub to some vacant lands as well. There's one that is proposed this direction in the original. I'm gonna go back. Nope. They had a stub here and here.
What's that middle area there? Is it the land?
This right here?
The towers.
Tower
Yeah,
lines.
power lines.
Power lines.
Power line, okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, hearing no other questions for staff, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Anyone here to speak in favor of the proposal? Please come forward with your name and address.
I'm Robert Thomas with Thomas Construction, 9 Wesley Court. We're proposing the development. We've become involved in the last probably 12 to 18 months to try to put the project together. Our design initially, we looked at what had been approved before when it was rezoned and brought into the city, and understood that there was quite a bit of opposition in the existing subdivision that's in the county. So we put all of our entrance on Rockingham. Felt like it's better sight distance getting out to 36. And we didn't even put one into Rockingham Meadows, because when you come down through that subdivision, through the roundabouts and all the calming devices, it's got the sight lines aren't great down there. And those residents, I think, feel the same way. So we had intended to just have the two entrances on Rockingham, and after staff review, we did update and add to Rockingham Meadows and have stubbed out the back. The two into the existing subdivision, the one on the lower end between the two houses, we don't feel like is buildable because it's on a cross slope and an upslope, and it's going to be just about impossible to realistically get a road in there with, the full city street. And then the other one, there's that little hook right there.
I was going to say, can you point? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is the one that we feel like is, from an engineering and a buildability standpoint, is practically impossible. And it just has the potential to dump traffic into this small existing neighborhood. This one right here, there's a little stub that rolls right here and kind of dead ends. We don't have access to, this is private property we don't have access to, and it does the same thing. It puts potentially a lot of traffic back into the existing subdivisions. So that's why we strayed from it. I feel like we've updated, we've put the standard city cross-section with sidewalks both sides. I think there's 15% requirement for open space. We're almost 20. Stormwater detention per the current regulations and all that. So any other questions you've got, I'd be glad to address.
Do you plan to put a buffer between the existing neighborhoods and your new development?
There's setbacks on all of it. A couple property owners had asked if we need to do some buffering where we're exactly at the required setback. We'll be glad to do some buffering. But I think we're just about all of it, we're well inside the required distances, and tried to design it that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone here else to speak in favor of the proposal? Okay, anyone here to speak against the proposal? Okay, I'll let you guys decide amongst yourselves how you're going to come forward. Name and address, please, sir.
My name is Donald Mitchell, and I live at 258 Rockingham Meadows Drive. And I've got a concern where the stub is. My house is, there's a house between me and the stub. And I've got a concern if there's 270 homes going to be built in that subdivision. To my understanding, there's only going to be two ways into that subdivision. One of them is through Rockingham Meadows. There's already 2 roundabouts in Rockingham Meadows. And there's 28 houses in Rockingham Meadows, so you're talking about almost 300 homes, and you only got 2 ways to come in and go out. And the one way to come out of that through Rockingham Meadows, there's a roundabout. If you're talking about going out of Rockingham Meadows to even turn left, there's a little hill right there. And by the time you get out there, and no cars are coming down Rockingham to go toward the lake, they're flying down that road anyway. You have to gun it when you pull out because there's cars going 40 and 50 miles an hour coming down that little hill right there. So I have a concern right there that there may be some accidents. Also, while you're in the Rockingham, if you're going to have that many houses and you're going to have school buses that come in and out, I doubt a big school bus could even make the roundabouts in Rockingham Meadows. So they're going to have to go all the way down to Rockingham into that entrance down through there. I also have another concern too, is getting out on 36. She showed some films about 36, but she always showed it at between 4:30 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon when you can't even turn left hardly. And so, and the other gentleman that spoke earlier on an occasion was talking about when there's an accident on 26, all that traffic is coming on 36 and you can't even go, there's no way you can get out. And so there's concern right there. So my concern is all the traffic that's going to be from 300 homes trying to get out on Rockingham. If I'm not mistaken, is Rockingham Road a county road? Yes. It's a county road. When they start moving the large equipment in to go in there and start doing the grade work and everything else, that road is not wide enough. Somebody's going to have to be backing up because it's going to take probably a lane and a half of that. So it's not even wide enough. It's really not even wide enough hardly for 2 cars to get by in one section right there. If you turn right on the Rockingham, right past the church right there, it starts narrowing right there and goes all the way down past Rockingham Meadows Drive. So I think that's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come ahead.
I'm Wayne Harris. I live on 119 Rosewood, and not really objecting the subdivision per se, but our subdivision, it don't have walkways and everything. Our kids play, ride skateboards, everything in our subdivision. We all walk our subdivision. I mean, it's a small subdivision. We just, we want to keep, you're putting 300 houses back there. You got 600 cars coming out of there. Two cars per house. The way I drive, I'm going to the quickest way out of my subdivision. That's through ours. That's the way I look at it. And pulling out on 36 from ours, you could see it. You didn't have no time to see nothing coming across that hill. There was no time. And from Rockingham, there is time to see. But ours, there is no time to see. It's just you gun it and go. But that's our main concern, is keeping it out of our subdivision, because there's too many kids playing in ours, and it's too small for all of that. There's no way it's going to work in our subdivision. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm James Moses. I live in 113 Delwood Lane in Heritage Hills. Last night, I counted the cars I had to wait on to get out of of the subdivision was 27 vehicles I had to wait on to turn left to come to last night's meeting. When they were working on 23, I tried to get the state to change the way they did the road. They built up the road 4 feet, and you cannot see the cars until they're right on top of you coming out of Boones Creek. It is a dangerous subdivision to come out of. We do not have the room for cars to come through, to go through our subdivision. We do not need the extra traffic. We do not have sidewalks. The roads are small. We do not have the room for the extra traffic.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moses.
My name is Jessica Johnson. I live at 145 Rosewood Lane. I'm the property to the left of the little piece of land that enters into Heritage Hills. As you can see, I do have 2 kids. I have a family. If that is used as an access point, that is going to take possibly some of my property, some of Mr. Harris's property, because it is not wide enough as it is to be a 2-lane road to even go in there. And as you can tell, Heritage Hills, we're a county, that's a county road. That's not even wide enough to barely get 2 cars going up and down in the first place, plus when you have cars that park on the side of the street. So my main concern is the traffic inside the subdivision, considering you have families in there, and I have children myself. And nobody's really done any type of traffic or anything of that nature. So my main thing is not using that as an access point into the development. I'm not opposed to the development. I'm opposed to that road itself, because it would be butting up to my house, because they would have to take most of that property, which means the road would be sitting right next to my driveway and right next to my fence line. And it would be the same thing for Mr. Harris. I don't think they're taking that in consideration, but I do like the developer where he mentioned that it is not a feasible place. But as you can tell, she keeps mentioning that it could be like a possibility, or it could be open to that. So that's not a guarantee to me that that's not going to be used. So I just need that point in mind, that that is not going to be an access point to Heritage Hills. It's not even a feasible place with the widening of how it is. And like I said, we're a county roads, not that wide. You're going to have to take a lot of people's property to even widen, to make traffic even flow properly into that subdivision. And take in consideration Rocking Meadows, where he said that they're a county. Got to take consideration the roads. I don't think that's being taken into consideration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, I'm Mary Ballard. I live in Heritage Hills also, at 151 Rosewood Lane. I think that Mr. Thomas does have an excellent plan. We have no objection to that. It is the access into our neighborhood that we're worried about. The roads are small. We maintain we pick up the trash and we do the grass cutting ourselves. So we've got people who drive their lawnmowers from their house, like Wayne drives his riding lawnmower from the house to this divided road that is Heritage to cut the grass. Would not be safe to do that anymore. My children walk around the block with their dogs. We have elderly people. It's a mix of young people and elderly people in our neighborhood. So it would be extremely detrimental to our neighborhood to have a lot more flow of traffic coming through there. I don't know, and there's probably 20 more of us when we say the same thing, it's just not safe for our neighborhood to have a heavy flow of traffic, people who are not invested in our neighborhood and not aware of the conditions there. So you've got, an 80-year-old woman walking around the block on a daily basis, Joan, You've got, she's got dogs. My dogs run out to meet her. My kids roller skate, and they have a skateboard and their bicycles. They're going up and down that road. It would be extremely dangerous, and it would impact the people with small children. This is a transitioning neighborhood. It is going from retiring people to young families coming in. I've been there for about 15 years, and I've seen a lot of young families come in and energize the neighborhood again. That would stop if it was heavy traffic, because you would lose that idyllic, all-American place where your kids can ride the bicycles. We know each other. We trick or treat, at each other's houses. We see each other. We're out there waving and talking to each other. And having a heavy flow of traffic would stop that. We would lose our community.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Ms. Ballard.
Hi, my name's Melanie Aldridge. I am at 274 Rockingham Meadows Drive, and I'm the last house where the stub is. So my concern was that, and I'm a little confused because, and maybe you can clarify or you can clarify, the throughway is not going to go through Heritage Hills. It will go through, it's proposed to go through Rockingham Meadows, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, and going off of what Donnie said, in our neighborhood, we do have 2 roundabouts. And he is not kidding when he says, when you pull out of Rockingham Meadows, because of the hill coming down Rockingham, you really have to gun it to get out, because people fly down there. And in the summer and fall, up until when the lake goes down, if there's a boat, a big truck coming down carrying a boat to Rockingham Dock, you are not going to get past them without going into somebody's yard or somewhere on Rockingham. It's tremendously narrow. And you were talking earlier with the last reading and all that, how narrow Brown's Mill is in Chickasaw. Rockingham is probably close to Chickasaw more than Brown's Mill. So my concern is that, and we have how many homes? 28 homes. A lot of kids in this neighborhood. You've got the roundabouts, emergency vehicles, if this is the only throughway. But I may have misunderstood. Did Mr. Thomas say that you had proposed another entrance off of Rockingham? 2?
The project has 2 entrances.
Off of Rockingham, not 1.
Not through the subdivision.
Okay. And not
Could
through
you, ma'am,
subdivision? You proposed not to
Ma'am,
go through.
ma'am,
Yes, I'm sorry.
please address us.
Okay. Did Mr. Thomas say not through Rockingham Meadows? Because it wasn't clear. That's the clarification I wanted.
Okay.
Because if it is, me standing up here is a moot point, so. I don't have a problem
We'll
with the
get clarification
subdivision.
on that.
We'll get clarification.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Anyone else to speak?
Emmett Ballard, 151 Rosewood Lane. I appreciate the expedience with which we're going through this, getting the paperwork last night and getting it up here, having you have your paperwork here. It's not quite up to date. There are some changes. I look at this. I look at the stub. The stub we talk about here is Rockingham Meadows Drive. I would really propose that somebody, and I would get my son to do this, go up and put a drone up in the air and show you that pathway through that little subdivision, around those roundabouts that we heard the lady talk about. Because if you look at that increased traffic coming down through there and to go around those roundabouts, it is not sufficient in the design of that roundabout, that circular path, for the additional traffic you're going to see. And one thing I would really suggest to you is maybe postpone this, or have somebody go up in there with a drone, take a picture of it so you can see the flow, because that's really what you're looking at. You're saying, is the flow there going to be sufficient to handle the traffic? And I would suggest doing that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me, and I would take the responsibility to do it and present it.
Thank you very much for that offer. Anyone else to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Hallman, 144 Rosewood Lane. I just wanted to add really quick, I drove the neighborhood and all of these proposed entry points this afternoon at about 2:30. Like other people have said, it took me about 7 minutes just to turn right on 36 out of Heritage Hills to go down to Rockingham. Now, Whitney had kind of motioned at the map that maybe there was another entry point at the base of Rosewood Lane where there's a hard right turn there.
You could use the mouse if you
Oh,
want for it.
that's right, I can't I? Okay, right around here, okay? Now, that's actually a body of water. And I took pictures of it today, and I printed off a couple, but it's a body of water. And in fact, there was a Johnson City truck down there parked nose out, because there's like some sort of pumping station down there, and it's not fenced or anything. That's a body of water, and it's marshland back there. My question last night was, is TDEC doing anything, any kind of studies there? Because I would think that it somehow connects to Boones Lake. Yeah, somehow connects. These bodies of water, they don't exist by themselves. So that's one concern I have, because even with all of the runoff that Mr. Thomas has proposed, you know, the storm drainage, there's going to be more water down there. If there are houses up on the top of the hill over here, right, this is really sloping land. There will be water drainage going this way and more coming down these lanes here in this direction. Now, the other thing, I drove through Rockingham Meadows, and there's a little, somebody had put up, let's see, where's Rockingham Meadows on here? But anyway, one of the kids, where the stub is, there's a basketball hoop. And I noted, after going through the roundabouts, I was driving a Toyota base model Highlander, very basic car, and I had trouble navigating around that traffic circle. I don't see a school bus doing it. But what I noted about the free throw area for the basketball hoop was that to the sides, it wasn't even as wide as a basketball court. So how do they figure that you're gonna get that many cars through there every day? And for sure, Rockingham Road, there's gonna be a lot of difficulty getting construction vehicles in and out of there, because I passed one gentleman who was walking, and I was able to slow down, and I noted when another car was coming, he pulled off to the side to let me go by the other car. When I was and I wasn't that far into the neighborhood. I was about halfway to Rockingham Meadows off of 36. So I think there are problems. I think the plan as it is great, but we are not talking about how much traffic, regardless of where the entry points are, how much traffic is going to get dumped onto 36 all day long. And since we heard about this, since I heard about this on Saturday, I counted the number of sirens I heard. There were 7 from Saturday night until this morning. So those were presumably accidents.
Anyone else to speak to the question? Seeing no one else standing forward, coming forward, or raising their hand, I'm going to close the public comment. All right, conversation amongst the commission, or any other questions for staff?
So I have a clarification. They're not going into the current subdivision, right? The entry is going to be off of Rockingham, but
Two main entrances, I'm interrupting you, but the two main entrances are on Rockingham. That's the two main entrances of the subdivision. Now remember, some of this is new code from when this was previously approved from 2008. They're going to need some additional connections in order to provide fire safety and emergency service safety for all of these houses. And connectivity, which this street stub helps to provide that. To only have these two entrances may not be something that they can do. And so one of the things that is difficult to kind of process, to carve out, is that this is a concept plan change. So what we're trying to do is to put as many details as we can together without getting into too much engineering. So the water body over here, if that's something that needs to be looked at, that's something that on a sheet of paper looks okay, may not, in engineering wise, may not work out. The connection here, I think this is one where, because of conversations that were had 20 years ago and the opposition of, and it coming out in the motion not to connect to this one, that is something well within to say, perhaps we don't want to, we still want to maintain that and not connect that. We have brought it up to the developer because when 2002 happened, there weren't the same fire codes as there are now. And if you need it, that is something to consider. Because as this moves forward with engineering, they're still going to have to meet all the subdivision regulations and all of the other city codes that are applicable, because there is no more vested plan.
So there's no other option for the developer then, right? Than to come through the existing neighborhoods?
There are options, there are options from Rockingham, yes, but there's a street stub connection that our subdivision ordinance says you need to connect. There's also fire code language that says you need a certain amount of access for, and I cannot, this is one I cannot, certain amount of access for a certain number of houses.
Okay. I'm just going to summarize so I can understand. So we've got two big neighborhoods. We've got Heritage Hills, which has the Rosewood Road there. We are not connecting into that based on this plan, correct?
The plan that is shown before you is not connecting into that.
Okay. And then we have two access points to Rockingham, and then the third is through Rockingham Meadows. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we're doing it through Rockingham Meadows because we're assuming, based on fire code, that we need that access point.
I would say that's a fair statement.
Okay.
Also, as land develops on this road, as we've talked about developable land, to put more stubs into those areas also will help other developments in emergency services or connectivity. Imagine getting all the way over to Boring Chapel through a neighborhood, and let me go to the.
So Whitney, is that something that the fire code, people, when they look at this, that they will make a suggestion to stub out, put some stubs in?
The stub out to adjoining properties, that is from the subdivision ordinance. What they're looking for, essentially, from what I understand, are real-life connections to roadways because emergencies happen now.
But I need clarification. You keep talking about county roads, county road. So how much input do we have on the county road being widened or to help the people as far as passing? I mean, where are we with that?
So Rosewood Meadows, with the one with the roundabouts and kind of one-ways and things, that's in the city. It's the Heritage Hills that's in the county, and I might have to ask the engineers to answer that question.
But Heritage Hills
I don't know.
As a body, we have no impact on the counties, on the county road system at all. But is Rockingham Road a city road up to a certain point or no?
Oh, it's right. Yes.
It's up to a certain point.
I think it goes up to this subdivision and stops.
Okay.
So both access points on Rockingham would be within the city? Okay, they're not. Okay. So one would be and one would not be?
Correct.
This is one I need a different aerial for.
Can you go to the city?
Yes, I can. I think I have. You will bear with a second.
Sure.
I think
to answer your question, this body has no authority or any impact on the county road decisions by the highway superintendent. But there is a place where it stops being a city road and becomes the county road, and that's what we're trying to figure out where that exact point is.
I think it goes up to Rockingham Meadows and then stops.
Okay.
Okay.
I think. That it's within the city. We're going to look on that map right now and find out.
I would be surprised if it doesn't go at least to Rockingham Meadows, which is a city subdivision.
Yeah, me
was gonna pull it up for everyone.
I know.
It's, okay, so you see here, here is Roan Street, Rockingham.
To that point, right?
Yeah,
Here,
yep,
Okay.
right past Rockingham Meadows.
right past Rockingham Meadows, and then this portion looks to be within the county. If you keep driving out, though, it comes back to being in the city right around here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other further questions for staff or amongst ourselves?
That didn't seem to give you very much clarification.
No, I'm, I'm still a little bit out to sea.
I think, yeah, but public comment's been closed. I'm not speaking for the chairman, but thank you.
You have a question?
Are we into our discussion?
Yeah, we're in our
Yes.
discussion. Step forward.
Hello?
Yeah.
Beam me up, Scotty. Is it an option for us to defer this till we can get clear information on emergency vehicle? My mouth's so big. Is it possible to defer this till we can get clarification on emergency vehicles and where
Are
this,
you talking about access and capacity to pass through?
right?
Yes, we could do that.
Has the fire department or has that already, when we have concept plans as opposed to a preliminary,
They do look at them.
they do look
Yes.
at them, yes.
And this is one where, yes, I have fire approval, because I got it at 5:09, as an email. So have we had a conversation about it, or, because I also have it for a plan that was submitted at 8, and we had another one that I haven't had a chance to get into City View, which shouldn't have changed much of it for fire, but that I needed to get into City View that came in around noon to make some changes from engineering's comments earlier in the morning. So we really are like processing through this as quickly as possible.
So Whitney, are you saying that the fire vehicles know they can do the roundabout, emergency vehicles can do the roundabout, and school buses?
So you're talking about this, let's go here.
Rockingham Meadows Drive.
Rocky Meadows Drive, right
Yeah.
here. So this has already been vetted through our engineering department. So those turning movements should be able to be made by anything that, I would imagine trash trucks go through here, school buses would go through here because it's inside the city limits already. This part is in the city limits. It's whether the road here, that's probably in the county.
Whitney, the thing that I'm sorry, I'm brain dead and on
Been here a
pain
while.
medicine. But I'm still confused about the access, because if I just heard you correctly, the fire department approved this. So they approved it with only the 2 roads access and not the stub road. Is
They
that-
approved it with the stub road.
Oh.
They have seen that. They approved, what they saw was what you saw. With the stub road into, let me go back,
Rockingham Meadows. Drive.
Rockingham Meadows.
So that's going to be a requirement from the developer to do that.
Yes. And here's where the fine line is that you're making a change about a concept plan. When this comes back to preliminary plat, because it will come back, that's going to come up again.
Yeah. We'll
So
see this again.
You'll see this again, and so whether it connects now or later, they'll need the connection to meet that portion of the fire code.
Yeah.
They'll also need it to meet that portion of the subdivision ordinance.
Yeah. Because we don't want stubs, ends where there could be connection and connectivity. We don't want just a big block there where we don't connect roads that already exist,
Because
correct?
there is a pavement there, there is a basketball goal there, I have seen it. This one here at Rosewood, it's where the boat is in the
Yeah.
pictures.
It's not a net paved.
It has not been
It's
paved.
never
It's
been
not-
opened.
No.
Yeah, I would venture to guess that that's not even the county doesn't consider themselves to have any right of way there.
Oh, no, they don't. It's actually privately owned land.
Yeah, exactly.
That is part of this property.
Right, okay.
All right.
So if we approve this tonight, it's still gonna come back to us again. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, because it has to go through the subdivision process.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll see it as a preliminary plot.
Yes.
Plat.
And that's where you'll see more engineering.
Okay.
And I know we've heard some comments about this, but I hope we don't. I mean, this is a subdivision. The Rockingham Meadows is a previously approved subdivision that met all of the engineering requirements, the street requirements, the fire code, all of those things when it was developed, however many years ago it was developed, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And this doesn't change or impact that.
No.
All right, any other questions? No, sir, I'm sorry, our public comment's closed. Thank you, though.
So Whitney, you have no concerns about whatever you've gotten at 8 o'clock last night and 5:30 this afternoon, that it would make any difference?
As a concept plan, they're meeting the things I have concerns about are describing their open space, describing it to meet the RP, and some notations about, I still have some confusion about rear yards, that they may have seen my comments, just to make sure that there is clarified that they will meet okay, let's go back. I'm gonna get real technical here. In the RP zone, the way that the rear yard is written is that the rear yard is of the adjacent zoning district, or 25 feet. So whichever, if it's more restrictive, it's 25 feet, up to 25 feet. So here is county, and it is R3, and that's 20 feet. So the lots that abut here need to be at least 25 feet. And the A1 that's over here, that's 30 feet, but they would still need to be 35 feet. When the lots that are backing up to open space, they don't actually have to have a rear yard because it's RP zoned. And then here, they would need to have rear yards of at least 25 feet. I just need to make sure that that is noted and clear on the plan. I'm not comfortable with that yet, but that's a quick conversation and notations on a plan.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Anybody have a motion?
I'll move to approve the concept plan as stated. I will say that I think entering into the neighborhood that's in place, when the preliminary plan comes forward, I think having some kind of speed structure there, so the first speed structure they hit is not that roundabout, I think would be smart. But of course, I'm not a community. I don't build neighborhoods, so but that's just what I thought in my head. So I move for approval.
All right, thank you.
Oh, is that with the requests that Whitney had for the additional clarifications? Do we need to include that in the motion?
I think we can get it with the developer, but it would be, you can say with staff's.
Absolutely,
yeah.
of course.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Does everybody understand the motion? All right, Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner, excuse me, Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oceanbine,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and for your
Absolutely.
presence.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hodges, I think we have one more item on new business. Let's just take just a minute and let the room clear.
was, Jackie.
know.
I don't know if you didn't hear that, but that lady came up and that's something that never happens to use around here.
Okay. I tell you what, it's
It's
very,
literally never happened in my life.
I'm so sorry. You know what, you know what, maybe I'll consult their services and then I'll just come hug you.
I did have somebody once cry and say, thank you so, I did have that one time on a conservative.
I have a client. We gotta get, I know that impacts the line.
We may have to start doing it.
Could I ask you to please clear the room, please, to take your conversations outside? We've got more business to take care of. May I have your attention?
Yeah, we want to go home sometime tonight.
Whitney, Ms. Hodges, would you please go ahead?
Okay. So our last rezoning for the evening is a county rezoning. We have been experiencing these on some regularity. So this request is, the petitioner has applied to the county to go from PRBD.
Hodges, could I interrupt you, please? Will, would you please close the door?
Okay, they got it.
Don't make me come out there.
Don't make me come down from here.
I'm just glad you got to use that gavel.
That's right, that was good. It was very useful today.
Go ahead, Whitney, thank you.
Okay. So this is a planned so currently it's planned residential business district, and they would like to go to B3 in order to take this existing building and make it into a granite countertop place with some outdoor storage. And here is kind of an aerial from the county showing where this is at Bugaboo Springs and Boones Creek Road. So using the existing building doesn't necessarily have an issue. I believe the issue is coming about with this site plan of they have this area that says where outdoor storage is to be, and it's very tiny on here. I'm sure it's going to be larger. And that comes into, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Oh, no, I don't have it. Okay. So let's take a bit in history. In your staff report, I wrote about how this area has a corridor overlay. And this was a multi-jurisdictional process with landowners to say, we want Boones Creek Road to look the same from Jonesboro to Johnson City. And so to do that, the cities have enabling legislation that allows for a design criteria in a corridor overlay. And the county has different enabling legislation. And so they had to do some additional zonings. And one of the things that they had to do in order to maintain that look that the city, both Jonesboro and Johnson City could do, was to rezone properties into this PRBD. So to prohibit some outside storage. And so that's really kind of where some of this issue is coming about. And so staff recommends denial for the reasons of maintaining the work and effort that group put in. Now, this is not a state where you could say, require a condition that they screen a certain way. There will be screening. I can't speak to what that would be because I'm not the county. But I know that they would have to do, I feel as though I've talked to Angie and there would be something involved with that. But there are a lot of bridge plan policies that really speak to some intergovernmental work, and that's where, as a city staff, we are coming to the decision of denial because of the work that was done in order to maintain the look of Boones Creek Road. But this is one where you guys are the recommending body, and it moves to the county commission.
That's right.
The future land use map, this is already an existing building, and this is called for a suburban area out here. So just letting you know.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Is anyone here to speak to this question? Sir, please come forward and give us your name and address.
I'm David Sanders. I live at 1715 Knob Creek Road here in the city. I've owned this property in my family since '60s, and it's been farmed all that time, but the new road, Boones Creek Road, has changed everything out there. This is a remnant left from the highway department, and we just like to put it to some use. There was a house there, but nobody wanted to live on that road, so the house was torn down. But there was a concrete steel building there, and we just like to be able to use it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Wilson. I live at 213 Willows Ridge in Johnson City. The gentleman that is interested in putting his marble business there or his kitchen equipment there has met with the county, Washington County, and they have talked about, if it were approved, what kind of a blind that he would put up, probably a Leland cypress wall or something that would keep the property itself away from the traffic going through on the Boones Creek Road. And the whole corridor out through there is vastly changing. If you had a larger picture instead of just the small entity that we have here now, you would see apartments, probably, I'm going to say at least 100 apartments on the across the road from this property.
That's these right here. They're right here.
Okay. So they're very close in proximity to the subject property. I am personally within 1,000 feet getting ready to start 100. And then within I'm going to say 500 feet of the subject again, there's a subdivision going in across the street from it. So this whole area is changing. And as far as traffic, this particular business would not have any effect to speak of on traffic count. So from the standpoint of the buyer's potential, I'm here just asking that you might give this some consideration, let it go to the county and make the final decision.
Sure.
I
Thank you,
appreciate
Mr.
your time.
Wilson. Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to the question? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment. Discussion amongst us, or any other questions for staff? Brett, I see your,
Well, I'm trying to, so is the rezoning request just with regard to the outdoor storage issue?
No, they're, I'm gonna ask you, is it because of the outdoor storage that you need the PR, or the B3?
What the county
Okay.
recommended.
So I'm going to assume yes. Nicole put the requirements of the PRBD in your packet as well as the B3, because
It's in your folder.
in your folder, if you want to look at those
It has the purple tab.
with the purple tab.
Couldn't have made it any easier for us.
And you know what? And so that, because we have it up. Now I'm just gonna put up the, kind of an aerial for you. Here is the property, and I can go in, since we have it up, if you need me to go in and out. And those are the apartments that he was talking about. And Mr. Wilson?
Did the apartments meet the threshold for the 2006 plans?
I have, this is in the
2016.
16, I don't know.
Okay.
So right now, it's planned residential business district. So I see PRD and PBD on, no, wait, I see it now. So it's uses permitted in R3A, B1, and B2, and golf courses. I'm just trying to get my head around this, I'm sorry.
So essentially, the outdoor storage
Yeah.
would be needed for, in,
Wholesale business, warehouses, storage yards. This is where Poor Boys was at? Is that where it was? Okay.
Okay, any other questions for clarification? That the issue at hand seems to be circling on around the issue of outdoor storage.
Well, it's a use under, yep. This is a kind of a little sliver of land that's not, in my mind, ever gonna be any kind of suitable for residential of any kind. And it's also kind of a narrow type of business that could really make a use of that area that's right there, based on the, I think the creek's right behind it, is that right? I think or the creek, is the Boones Creek right behind it? Or there's some sort of, who knows where Boones Creek actually is anywhere, but or if it even exists really. But, yeah. So I'll move for approval of, or a recommendation of approval of the rezoning request based on those factors.
I second it.
Right. We have a motion to approve the rezoning request from PRBD to B3, general business. Any other clarifications or discussion?
Does this have to go to the county
This goes
commissioners?
to the county. We're only
County.
making a recommendation. The decision rests with the county commission.
All right.
No other questions? Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays,
Yes.
Commissioner Oshinbain,
Yes.
Commissioner Rhodey,
Yes.
Chairman Dagenhart.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Okay, wrapping up with reports from committees and city staff. Ms. Hodges, I think you've got us a brief report from our two committees working.
And I will start with the strategic committee. And what the strategic committee has been working on, and it was in your packet, are the bylaws. And staff, we've kind of, about every 3 years, you want to take a look at your bylaws and see what changes need to be made. We need to read these twice, so to basically say they're in the public record at this point. Not that the public needs to necessarily comment on how you run your meetings, but just as a matter of policy. So if you have any questions, maybe that's something, since our night has run long, if you want to save them for the next meeting, or if you want to email me in between, and I can help clarify. What I've tried to do is put rationale to each of the changes out to the side.
I want to make one comment about a bylaws change, and I think it's to the benefit of staff, is that we're working on changing the schedule on when documents and submissions have to be in hand, so that we don't run into this afternoon of the commission meeting with you guys processing paper and trying to
Yes.
reframe
Gotta
for
have more
us.
time.
So that is one of the changes that is in the bylaws. And so what the change essentially is that a developer can submit their plans at any point in time. But what we have that is complete by the 15th will be what is brought to the Planning Commission. The way that it's organized right now, it almost assumes a near perfect submission. And that is not necessarily how we're getting them at this point in time. So this will help us to make sure that we're not running around for all of the other things that we do for in the city.
But Whitney, I think though that we should have the opportunity to see and understand what is really being presented, rather than, y'all saying, well, when we think we can do this, or we'll talk to them. It's not fair to y'all, it's not fair to us, because we need to make decisions based on good information.
We agree. We're hoping that this change will help with that. So we'll give it a go, and we'll see how, and if we needs to be tweaked, we'll come back.
So tonight is officially our first reading of
Yes.
these bylaw revisions that you had presented to you. So we'll be voting on them next meeting. So does that cover our report from the strategy
That
committee?
covers your report from strategy. They will again meet at the beginning of the first Wednesday of April. Now, in legislative and land use, just wanted to update the other side of the committee. What we've been doing as far as looking at, and I've got several documents, but looking at how we look at open space in the city of Johnson City, and to actually start working towards an ordinance to require open space for different types of development. So subdivisions, not just RP zoning districts, but in the other zoning districts. And then in larger commercial projects. I think that's what we came up with today. And we have done some education as far as what type of open space is appropriate in what areas of the town. And we've been using this thing called a transect model. It's a placemaking framework. And you can Google it more, or we can. I don't want to belabor anything because it's late in the evening. But basically, taking this model and saying these types of open spaces would be more appropriate here, or setting aside this amount of land for conservation or this type of thing. What we are also trying to do is work with Parks and Rec and incorporating whatever planning they have. Because they have started a new planning process for public parks. But our main focus in this realm and ordinance is actually on private lands. And I think that may piggyback into some other things as far as pedestrian connectivity with sidewalks. That's not what this group is looking at. They're strictly looking at open space. The GIS department has developed some really interesting maps as far as being able to collect data on wildlife corridors, our steep slopes, just natural things that we have around the city. So we've been able to do that. And so it's been a very productive 4 months. They will take a break in April and return in May. And we will work on, in between, we will be working on ordinance language that we will likely workshop as a whole planning commission before we start diving into it more.
Thank you for those reports. Any questions for staff? My compliments to the staff for
Yes.
great leadership and helping us work through these, and helping us learn and helping us contribute. Mr. Mitchell.
You'll give me 1 minute before you adjourn.
I will. Any other questions? I would remind us to leave our empty folders with Ms. Lawrence so she can use them next month. And hearing no other questions, I'll turn the floor over for only 1 minute to Mr. Mitchell. Because I'm tired.
1 minute.
No, I wanted to just take an opportunity to, because you all are all together, to share, and I'm actually glad that I can say this because it ties into that last Washington County rezoning. I have mentioned to you all before that about 14 months ago, I believe, or so, the city and Jonesboro and Washington County, all three partnered up to apply for a TDOT planning grant to study Boones Creek corridor all the way from Roan Street all the way to Jonesboro. And so that grant, we did receive those funds. We hired a very capable land planning and engineering, traffic engineering firm called WSP, and they have been the lead on this. They have put together a really well-done plan. And so they are ready to present that plan to you all as well as to the Washington County Planning Commission. And so we would like to have a joint Washington County and City Planning Commission meeting. And the proposal is at this point, and so forgive me if the consultant is watching this meeting, because we're trying to have it at the Jonesboro Civic Center or Visitor Center. We just haven't gotten confirmation on that exact location. But the plan is, because we have a fifth week, we have an extra week in the month of March. So the plan is at this point to have it on Thursday evening, the 31st. And so if you will just add that as a placeholder, just pencil that in for the 31st. Angie is doing the same thing with her planning commission, and it would be in the visitor center there in the round, and then it would be presented by the consultant to you all for action, and then ultimately a recommendation back to each of their, to our city commission, to the town of Jonesboro, and then to Washington County Board of County Commissioners. So anyway, I just share that, if you would, pencil that in on the 31st. Should be really interesting.
What time it would be?
Probably 5:30 or 6. But you will be receiving confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other comments or business before us, I'm going to call us adjourned.